Chapter 152. After leaving Changtian, Tongning did not directly return home. She originally wanted to go to Hairue to see Emoting. But, as she arrived downstairs, Lu Che told her over the phone that Emoting wasn't at the office. Tongning parked her car in the garage, but did not leave immediately. She thought about the conflict between her and Lan Shi and had a complicated look in her eyes. Not long after, Long Jie suddenly patted Tongning on the arm and pointed out the car window. Tongning followed Long Jie's line of sight and realized the people in the garage were Emoting and Lu Che. Lu Che, didn't you say Big Boss wasn't at the office? Long Jie asked anxiously as she looked at Tongning's expression. After the incident with Han Yufan, Long Jie was afraid Tongning would get hurt again. She especially didn't like it when Tongning was lied to. Tongning watched as Emoting and Lu Che left without much change in expression. She simply looked at Long Jie and felt she was making a big deal out of nothing. You're overthinking things. Aren't you afraid at all? Tongning did not say anything. She simply pulled out her phone and gave Emoting a call. As soon as Emoting picked up, she asked, "Where were you just now? Were you checking on me?" Emoting's lips curved upwards after hearing Tongning's question. In that case, do you want me to check on you? I was at the office just now. I'm heading out to meet a business partner. Emoting replied gently. A moment ago, Lu Che said you weren't at the office. Emoting lifted his head and looked at Lu Che, who was driving with a sharp gaze. He then replied, I didn't order you to do that. Are you still at Hairue? Tongning's voice sounded a little pitiful. In that case, I'll turn around and pick you up. I'll let you vent some of your anger on Lu Che. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Emoting placed his phone in his pocket and glared at Lu Che. Should I re-evaluate your abilities? Lu Che, I'm going to say this one last time. Don't lie to Tongning, even if it's something as simple as whether I'm around or not. If Tongning hadn't called me and kept this question to herself over time, how do you think our relationship as a married couple would have gone? Lu Che felt a little guilty as he quickly apologized. Sorry, President. I simply didn't know what excuse I could come up with to stop the madam. I didn't ask you to come up with an excuse to brush her off. As long as you don't say anything, she won't notice. I understand. Lu Che was indeed outstanding at work, but sometimes his EQ wasn't there. This was the main reason why he still didn't have a girlfriend. Emoting gestured for Lu Che to turn around and successfully picked up Tongning. He then pulled her into his embrace and said, I never told Lu Che to say I wasn't around. I know. Tongning nodded. Otherwise, do you think I should trust him more? Lu Che lowered his head in guilt. Emoting stroked Tongning's hair in satisfaction as he replied, Of course you trust me more. But it's already been 20 minutes since you called Lu Che, and he still hasn't left the car park. Did something happen? Tongning froze for a moment. She didn't expect Emoting to be so attentive. So, she explained everything that happened at Changtian from start to finish. The reason I haven't left is because I'm thinking about the huge conflict between Lan Shi and myself. If this continues, we will definitely fall out. The incident with Ling Feng is just the beginning. Plus, Luo Hao and Li Danny are also involved. Emoting listened quietly. Right now, his identity was that of a husband listening to his wife's worries. He then reached out his hand to comfort her and give her courage. Ning, you seem to have forgotten. Your ultimate goal is Star King. Changtian's purpose is simply to help you make the transition. When it comes to people that want to hurt you, don't feel guilty fighting back. You've always known this. We still have Changtian's contract in our hands. If we can't avoid bad relations, then we can only do business. Don't tell me. With me behind your back, you're still afraid? Tongning rubbed against Emoting's palm and shook her head. I'm not afraid. I just feel bad for Lan Shi. Someone that was once on the same side can change so quickly. As you know, Lan Shi used to be a businesswoman. On the surface, what she wants and what you want may seem the same, but in reality, they are worlds apart. You see her as an equal friend, while she sees you as a subordinate. I understand. Tongning confirmed her stance. Next time, if Lan Shi came up with another problem to make things difficult for her, then she would no longer be polite to her. After all, if the person that made things difficult for her didn't feel guilty, then why should she feel bad? Don't worry, just wait to film LM. Ting's words had a double meaning. However, Tongning only understood one part of it. 8 p.m. at a luxurious 5-star hotel. In order to deal with Ling Feng, Zhao arrived at the private room half an hour early. So, by the time the other party arrived, all they saw was Zhao. Ling Feng was born as a child star and was currently the most popular handsome little fresh meat. With his outstanding looks, he attracted a large number of fans. He even starred in a few dramas that were being broadcasted. So, it was understandable that Lan Shi wanted to use him to create hype. However, seeing Tongning hadn't arrived, Ling Feng immediately removed his sunglasses and said something to his assistant. Immediately, his assistant asked Zhao, "Where's Tongning?" Zhao looked at the man and pulled out a glass of wine, filling it to the brim. "Tongning just returned from Moscow today. She's a little airsick and threw up on the way here. In the end, I had no choice but to send her home. I'm sorry, Ling Feng. I'll punish myself with 3 glasses." After hearing this, the man's expression did not look too good. His manager even slammed the table. "What does Tongning mean by this?" "Ling Feng, it's not that Tongning doesn't want to come. She was just saying she often watches your dramas and really likes you. That's why she asked me to take her out early to see you." Who would have thought? She almost fainted on the way here. And Zhao said with a mixture of truth and lies as he downed the 3 glasses in one gulp. Did she really say that? Ling Feng's vanity was satisfied and his anger lessened. Absolutely. Well, since that's the case, I won't blame her. Say hello to her for me and tell her that I'm looking forward to the commercial shooting in 2 days. After Ling Feng finished speaking, he stood up and put his sunglasses back on his face. Seeing Ling Feng leave, Zhao revealed a cold expression. He knew, at this moment, he could only put up a front. "Ling Feng, are you really going to let that little model off the hook?" Ling Feng's manager asked with a hint of pity. Ling Feng chewed on a piece of gum and gave off a devilish aura. With a personality unique to his age, he replied, "That old model actually dared to stand me up? Fine, if she doesn't show up today, then I won't show up during the shoot either. Let her worry about it. Let's see where she can find a male lead." Chapter 153. But we signed a contract. Ling Feng's manager furrowed his brows as he followed behind. "Just tell them I'm not feeling well and ask the doctor to give me a certificate. Don't you know how to do that?" Ling Feng's lips curved into a playful smile. Everything along the way had been smooth sailing. No one had dared to stand him up like this. Yet, a model like Tongning had the guts to do this. "I understand." Ling Feng's manager straightened his coat as he followed closely behind Ling Feng. The reason Ling Feng could act so recklessly was because his father was the biggest sponsor of the film and television company. Even if he did break the contract and didn't show up for the commercial, he would simply have to pay a small penalty. For him, it was nothing. But for Tongning, it was different. She treasured every chance she got because she knew it wasn't easy to come by. That night, Beijing was brightly lit. Zhao drove to Hyatt Regency. This was the first time he had openly entered Tongning's home. Although he had already imagined how luxurious Tongning and Ting's love nest would be, when he actually saw the Spanish palace style, he was still surprised. A moment later, Tongning came downstairs dressed in home attire. She looked at the cautious Zhao and said, "You're here? Ling Feng didn't make things difficult for you, did he?" "Not really. But this Ling Feng doesn't play by the rules. I don't think he'll let us off so easily," Zhao explained. "Right now, Lan Shi is also trying to suppress you. From now on, we need to be more careful." "You seem to be leaning towards me?" Tongning sat on the sofa with a hint of a smile in her voice. Zhao froze for a moment. He didn't realize his words had already revealed the answer that Ting had asked for back in Moscow. "For now, I will stand on the side of my heart," Zhao replied in seriousness. For him to suddenly betray Lan Shi was not something he could do. "It's okay. I won't force you," Tongning said as she ran her fingers through her hair. "After LM's commercial, you will be shooting for a few top magazines. In the coming month, you will be quite busy, so I just wanted to give you a heads up." Zhao spotted Ting walking down from the second floor towards the living room. Compared to when he was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, he looked different. His face was still as perfect as ever, but it was a little less fierce and more homely. He had a jacket hanging on his arm. Seeing Tongning's thin clothing, he helped her put it on before returning to the second floor. He did not interrupt their conversation at all. Just as Nzaheo was curious about Imoting's strange actions, he suddenly noticed the phone on the table. It was a simple message. Ting, I'm cold. I can't stand your nauseating behavior. I'm going to head back first. After speaking, Nzaheo stood up. However, Tongning held him back. Zaheo, although I've said this many times, I still want to emphasize that I don't do evil with others. But I will definitely take revenge. As long as Lanshi doesn't go overboard, I will try my best to tolerate her. Get ready for the commercial shoot. Nzaheo said calmly as he turned around and left Hyatt Regency. Tongning's eyes darkened as she wrapped her jacket around herself and returned to the study room. Seeing Mo Ting busy with work, she sneaked up behind him and leaned over to wrap her arms around his neck. Everything about the man in front of her made her extremely infatuated. Whenever they were at home, all she wanted to do was get a little closer to him. Are you still cold? Mo Ting asked as he flipped through some documents. Uh-huh. Tongning nodded. Go turn up the heater. Can I stay in your arms? Tongning asked gently. Come on. Mo Ting had no choice but to put down the documents and let her sit in his arms. He then wrapped a blanket around her and wrapped one arm around her waist as he flipped through the documents with the other. Our bed is a little big, Tongning suddenly said as she lay on Mo Ting's chest. You don't like a big bed? I hope when I flip over, I won't be able to flip out of your arms. At least the size of the bed is just right. Mo Ting let out a gentle laugh as he listened to Tongning's steady breathing and continued to work. Every now and then, he would look down at Tongning's bare fingers and sigh to himself. It was such a waste that Tongning didn't wear a ring. All he wanted to do was put a ring around her slender hands. 2 days later, LM's commercial shoot was to begin. Originally, this wasn't a big deal and Mo Ting didn't need to make a personal appearance. But as soon as they left, Mo Ting followed closely behind. The filming crew was in a 5-star resort. The interior design was luxurious and grand. There was also an artificial ocean and a beach. More importantly, it was the place where many celebrities held their weddings. It was very valuable for traveling and viewing. However, as soon as Tongning joined the filming crew, she did not have time to relax. She immediately headed into the waiting room to get changed and get ready. The director of the commercial was a famous film director. He had agreed to help her film the commercial because he wanted to help a friend. He was nearly 40 years old and had a high status in the entertainment industry. He was an upright person and most importantly, he hated people being late. Tongning, it seems Ling Feng hasn't arrived yet. Long Jie couldn't help but complain as she watched Tongning put on her makeup. Could it be that he wants revenge? Don't worry about others. Focus on yourself first. Tongning replied as she looked into the mirror. By the way, let me show you the jewelry you will be wearing this time. Long Jie carefully opened the box in front of Tongning. She wasn't sure why, but as soon as Tongning laid eyes on the set of jewelry, she liked it a lot. Firstly, she liked the LM brand. Secondly, she felt an inexplicable sense of intimacy. This set of jewelry is called True Love. Apparently, a customer has already pre-ordered it. There is only one set in the entire world. True Love, True Love. Tongning did not look at the necklace and earrings. Her gaze was directly attracted to the wedding rings. How interesting, right? Using sound waves to convey the words he wants to say to his wife. He used a special technique to engrave them onto the rings. In fact, he used the smallest diamond to embellish the sound waves. It is so beautiful, so special. Tongning picked up the rings and glanced at them. She then noticed a number engraved on the inside of the ring. 0819. That's right, it was 0819. Tongning was a little surprised. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. But when she saw the card inside the box, her hands began to tremble. What is this? Long Jie leaned over curiously. Seeing the card in Tongning's hands, she couldn't help but exclaim, was this custom-made by Big Boss? Chapter 154. Inside the card, there weren't any sweet nothings, nor were there any vows of undying love. It simply said, Tingning, for the rest of my life. Tongning looked at the card a few times and placed it against her heart. She then looked at the ring as her heart surged. So, it's a promise, for the rest of my life. Long Jia looked at the ring and suddenly realized Tongning was actually married. After all, she now had a symbol of her identity. So, she couldn't help but wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. However, just as she was about to say something, a tall figure suddenly appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. Long Jia kept her mouth shut and smiled at Tongning. With a ring, how could I not have a male lead? Seeing Long Jia point towards the door with her chin, Tongning followed her gaze. Ting appeared in the doorway dressed in a brown vintage suit. He was handsome and dignified. He appeared especially steady and tall. Long Jia jumped off the table and left the waiting room, leaving the couple alone. At this time, Tongning slowly stood up from her chair and looked at Ting before looking at the ring. Is this a surprise? Ting's lips curved upwards. His expression was handsome and gentle as he walked over to Tongning and pulled out the ring from the box. He then knelt down on one knee and looked at Tongning. This is a simple ring. It's not a precious gift, but it doesn't represent even 1/10,000 of the feelings I have for you. Although we are already married, I don't want you to miss out on the romance that others have already experienced. Tongning did not say a word. She simply pulled Ting up and held back her tears. You don't need to be like this. You don't need to be like this. Being able to marry you is already enough for me. Ting wrapped his arm around Tongning. He wanted nothing more than to press her into his heart and let her watch it beat for her. Do you like it? Tongning nodded her head and allowed Ting to put the ring on her right ring finger. This ring isn't the one you will be using for filming. Not many people know how to express this ring. So, it is a secret between the two of us. Even if it's a normal day, you can wear it out. I'm the only one wearing it. Tongning noticed the man's ring did not have a symbol of a sound wave. Instead, it simply had a white diamond embedded into the body of the ring. The design was simple, but inside the ring was the word in T. Behind it was a string of numbers that matched the words on Tongning's ring and reflected each other. Such a pair of rings, when put together, would be a pair of rings. Looking at it individually, there was no connection at all. It was just a single accessory ring. Ting stretched out his hand towards her. She immediately took out a man's ring from the box and slipped it onto Ting's left ring finger. When the two of them saw each other's hands being bound, their hearts were filled with emotions. Therefore, they snuggled up to each other and held each other's right hand. Beautiful. So beautiful. As she loved LM and had previously endorsed LM wedding rings, it was only natural for her to wear LM jewelry. After all, LM was happy for her to advertise for their jewelry. But, I still want to take wedding photos with you. Tongning revealed her wish. Of course, she never expected this opportunity would come so quickly. As they still had filming to do, Ting did not stay for too long. He quickly left the waiting room. At this time, Long Jia returned with the jewelry Tongning was going to wear. For the sake of getting you to wear a wedding ring, Big Boss has put in a lot of effort. But this is even better. A wedding should look like a wedding. Long Jia approached Tongning and winked at her. How does it feel? Will Big Boss wear it too? Uh-huh. Tongning nodded. How satisfying. This pair of rings is the only pair in the world. No one understands the meaning of this pair of rings. Only the two of you do. Plus, Big Boss has been telling everyone that you are his wife. Although no one will be able to guess, one day, the meaning of this pair of rings will blind the eyes of the public. Tongning was afraid she would lose the ring while she was working, so she quickly removed it and carefully put it away. Is the shoot about to start? Yes, it's almost ready. But Ling Feng still hasn't arrived. Long Jia shook her head. Just as the two women were furrowing their brows, and Zaheo appeared in the doorway and said to Tongning, Ling Feng hasn't arrived yet. I don't think he'll be coming today. He's taking revenge on you for standing him up a couple of days ago. But you don't need to worry. Director Liu doesn't like spoilt brats. If Ling Feng doesn't appear today, he may be replaced by the director. How are we going to film without a male lead? Tongning asked. I'm sure there are backup candidates, but none of them are suitable. Hearing this, Tongning suddenly had an idea. Zaheo, there's something I want to do. What is it? Inside Beijing's biggest gym, Ling Feng was currently in the middle of an intense workout. His manager stood beside him, holding onto his phone as he furrowed his brows. Ling Feng, let's go film on set. This director is not to be trifled with. What's there to be trifled with? As long as my dad pulls out the money, he'll still show his ugly face. Ling Feng scoffed. Ling Feng snorted. I'll leave that old model hanging first. I'll let her know the consequences of standing me up. To stay in this industry, you have to submit to resources and background. Who does she think she is? How dare she embarrass me? Are you really not going? Ling Feng's manager repeatedly confirmed with Ling Feng. If I say I'm not going, then I'm not going. Why are you so annoying? Ling Feng pushed his manager away impatiently. His manager had no choice but to give LM a phone call. In response, LM explained to Director Liu. However, Director Liu also had a film to shoot. He only had one day. How could he wait? So, he directly replied to LM, either replace Ling Feng or replace me. There are only two options. But Ling Feng's father is, I don't care who his father is. If he doesn't show up, there are only two options. LM relayed the director's words to Ling Feng's manager. However, Ling Feng continued to sneer. Are you trying to scare me? Since when have you not made it sound so serious? Don't worry about these old geezers. If worst comes to worst, I'll just not film his film in the future. Or, I'll get my dad to step in. Fine, whatever you say. So, the manager told the director that Ling Feng was resting at home because he wasn't feeling well and couldn't go anywhere. As soon as the director heard this, he was furious. He almost threw his phone on the ground. What the hell? Is this how Ling Feng acts? Does he really think he's an A-list big shot? Replace him. Chapter 155. But, director, where are we going to find an artist that matches Tongning's looks? Even if there is one, they might not have enough time on their schedule. Why don't we wait a little longer? Should I give Ling Feng a phone call? LM's staff member tried his best to negotiate with Director Liu. As you know, Ling Feng's father is not someone to be offended. The staff member was in a difficult position. Director Liu thought for a moment before placing his hands on his hips and nodding his head, then hurry up and call him. The staff member smiled in relief and immediately turned around to give Ling Feng's manager a phone call. However, the answer he received was that Ling Feng was not feeling well and could not attend the shoot. As you all know, Ling Feng has just finished filming a film and is a little tired. His stomach isn't feeling well, and he will be in the hospital for the next few days. Let him rest for a few days. Manager, tell me honestly, what is Ling Feng not happy about? The staff member asked in a quiet voice as he covered his phone. We can change it. Actually, it's not a big deal. Ling Feng was not feeling well to begin with. On top of the fact that Tongning stood him up a couple of days ago, his mood has worsened. The staff member immediately understood. Ling Feng was targeting Tongning because she didn't have dinner with him. Ling Feng doesn't want to make things difficult for you. How about this? I'll speak to Ling Feng again, and you can try to convince Tongning to lower her head to Ling Feng. Lower her head? How could she lower her head? Drink? Smile along? Publicly apologize? The staff let out an embarrassed laugh and did not say another word. He had never imagined that Ling Feng would suddenly act so arrogantly because of a reason like this to hold a grudge against Tongning. It was all because she didn't have dinner with him. After a few simple sentences, the manager hung up the phone. At this time, LM's staff member sighed and turned to the director. Director Liu, please wait a little longer. There's no need to wait. Replace Ling Feng. Director Liu said straightforwardly, I heard your conversation just now. This Ling Feng has always been a playboy. Tongning's refusal to have dinner with him is a clear indication of her attitude. She doesn't want to create hype with him. So, replace him. In my dictionary, there is no such thing as a spoiled heir. If he has the guts, tell his father to come look for me. He even asked a woman to apologize to him. Don't you feel any shame? The staff weighed the pros and cons between Director Liu and Ling Feng. In the end, they decided to listen to Director Liu and replace Ling Feng. However, choosing a replacement was a bit of a headache. However, just as the staff were getting restless, Zaheo approached the two and asked the LM staff, Has Ling Feng arrived yet? Heir. I'm afraid Ling Feng won't be able to make it. By the way, I wonder if Mr. N knows of any male models that would match Tongning's appearance and height? The main problem is, Tongning is too tall. For the image to be aesthetically pleasing, we need a male model that is around 1.9 m. And Zihao lowered his head and pondered for a moment before smiling. There really is such a person. The staff member was overjoyed and immediately asked, "Can we try? I wonder if he is willing to do us this favor? What about your schedule? How much is the advertising fee?" He has a personal relationship with Tongning, so he doesn't need any advertising fees. He doesn't lack remuneration, but he does have one request. What is it? He can't reveal his identity. In other words, he can't show his face. During the shoot, we need to clear the set, and Zihao replied. The staff member was stunned for a moment before looking at the director. The director immediately understood. He assumed the man was an outsider that didn't like to be exposed. So he nodded his head. "No problem, I will only use his back." "What about his appearance?" "Don't worry, this man, whether it's his appearance or height, is more than enough to match Tongning." An outsider? With such good qualities, why doesn't he enter the entertainment industry? Director Liu suddenly asked. No one else can invite him. And Zihao winked at the two and clapped his hands. Then it's settled. I will first ask Tongning to come over and set the scene. What kind of big shot is this? Director Liu couldn't help but mumble. According to Tongning's current status, it's impossible to find an artist that is bigger than Ling Feng. I'm also curious, the staff member laughed. A moment later, the first scene was set up. It was a proposal with the beach as the background. The setting was for Tongning to stand under the sun as a man suddenly appeared behind her. He gently held onto her right hand and forced a ring onto her finger. There was only one line. "If you don't marry me soon, you will be too old." 5 minutes later, Tongning came out in a light blue patterned chiffon dress. Her long, soft hair flowed down her back and her face was covered with delicate makeup. She exuded a cold yet peaceful aura. LM was very satisfied with Tongning's makeup. As soon as Tongning changed, her aura changed. Even though she was usually cold, after putting on makeup, Tongning's tranquility was accompanied by a slight smile. She was like a woman in love. Her entire body was glowing with happiness. "Tongning, follow the script first," the director said to Tongning. Tongning originally wanted to say no, but when she thought about the male lead that was about to appear on stage, she felt a little nervous. This was something she had never felt before. She actually felt nervous. So, she did not reject the director's suggestion. She walked straight into the middle of the set, lowered her head, and revealed her expression. Although the director was looking at Tongning through the screen, he was truly surprised. Although a female model's acting wasn't perfect, it was so natural and flawless. The anticipation one felt when waiting for their lover to appear, the anxiety one felt after waiting for so long, and the disappointment of being stood up. Tongning expressed all of these emotions through her eyes. Most importantly, she was just a model. Compared to those popular flowers and grasses, she was much better. "Cut," the director yelled at Tongning. Afterwards, he turned his head and asked the staff member, "When will the male lead be arriving? I heard he is getting ready to change. Let's see who Tongning can invite. If he doesn't have any influence, then let Tongning do the shoot alone." "Okay, Director Liu, I will listen to you," LM's staff member replied. "I will also keep an eye out for other male models." As the two conversed, and Zihao suddenly walked up to them and ordered all unrelated personnel to leave. LM's staff member immediately complied. At this moment, the only people left on set were a few key figures and Tongning. They wanted to see what kind of god Tongning had invited. Following that, they heard a series of steady footsteps. They quickly turned their heads and saw a man with an imposing appearance, walking towards them with leisurely steps. Chapter 156. Hi, Rue, CEO. The staff was shocked as he pointed at Mo Ting and stuttered. How is this possible? Director Liu also saw the scene in front of him and was in disbelief. Tongning actually managed to invite Hai Rue's CEO, Mo Ting. The mysterious CEO that controlled the life and death of an artist practically controlled all the resources in the entertainment industry, and was at the top of High Rue Entertainment. Oh my God. There was nothing more surprising and frightening than this. Mo. President Mo, hello? The LM staff immediately bowed respectfully towards Mo Ting. Even Director Liu had to be polite to Mo Ting. No need to be polite, Mo Ting said coldly as he adjusted his black suit jacket. Then, you. The LM staff obviously didn't believe Tongning could invite Mo Ting, so he asked for confirmation. This was Mo Ting. I knew Tongning needed help, so I took some time to come over. Will it take long? Mo Ting asked calmly without explaining their relationship. All he did was send a message to the public. He and Tongning were on good terms. It won't take long, it won't take long. It turns out President Mo can guest star for a friend, the LM staff explained in surprise. It will only be Tongning. Mo Ting's gaze was sharp as he replied straightforwardly. The LM staff was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Mo Ting to be so direct. Originally, he had already made up a story in his mind, but Mo Ting's next words brought him back on track. She is a model that is hard to come by. I can't find a reason to reject her. Mo Ting used a statement. It was like he didn't accept any rebuttals. Hearing this, the staff and Director Liu nodded their heads in understanding. It turned out Mo Ting valued talent. However, Mo Ting and Tongning were both cold and mysterious to the public. So, to others, even if Mo Ting helped Tongning, there was nothing wrong with it. Even if they thought of the two of them together, they would still feel a sense of distance between them, like they were just friends. But even if they were friends, Mo Ting's treatment towards Tongning was already special enough. Even High Rue's artists didn't have the opportunity to see Mo Ting, yet Tongning was able to ask them to drop their work and come to her rescue with a single phone call. Also, I hope that my appearance on the set will remain a secret forever. Of course, no problem. Oh. LM's staff immediately made an okay gesture. They had to quickly prepare the contract and get everyone present to sign a confidentiality agreement. Mo Ting was not someone they could afford to offend. Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply lifted his head and looked at Tongning in the distance. Their eyes met for a good few seconds. LM originally wanted to ask Mo Ting if he knew what they were going to film today. But, remembering Mo Ting was the one to save the day, even if he randomly filmed, LM would not have any objections. So, LM's staff turned to the director and asked, then, can we start now? Of course, but President Mo knows. Let's start. Mo Ting did not waste any more time. He knew better than Tongning what she was supposed to film today. There were a total of 3 scenes: the proposal, the wedding, and the post-wedding. Please. Director Liu gestured for Mo Ting to enter. In reality, he really wanted to ask if Mo Ting needed to explain his positioning and positioning. But, because he was talking to Mo Ting, he did not have the courage to ask. All he could do was take a few shots and see what the effect would be. Director Liu, hurry and pinch my face to see if I'm dreaming. This is Mo Ting we are talking about, the CEO of High Rue. I can't believe he actually came to film our commercial. Wouldn't it be great if we could use it to promote our commercial? Director Liu turned to look at the staff. Deep down, he felt extremely honored. After all, how many directors in this world could film a commercial for Mo Ting? Up until now, he was the only one. This was the Mo Ting that could turn the entertainment industry upside down with a simple stomp of his foot. This Ling Feng was definitely worth it. There could be 100 Ling Fengs, but Mo Ting only had one. Not only you, even I feel like I'm on cloud 9. Look at the other staff. Their jaws are about to drop to the ground. It seems Tongning is not to be underestimated. After speaking, Director Liu turned to the 2 people in front of the camera and said, Tongning, you can get to know President Mo first. Let's take a 10-minute break before we start filming. Tongning looked at Mo Ting. At this man dressed in a black tailor-made suit with a neatly ironed collar. His body was tall and well-built. He was so handsome that he could turn the world upside down as he walked towards her. Her heart softened into a mess. Even if the scenery in front of her was fake and the words in the commercial were fake, as long as the person was real, that was enough. President Mo, I wasn't confident that you would agree. Mo Ting looked at Tongning's dress and long hair flying in the wind. He walked over to her and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. No one else can do me a favor, but you are my disaster. Didn't you say you wanted to propose to me and let me enjoy the romance that I deserve? I want you to film this commercial with me. Do I have to do whatever you say? Tongning's lips curved upwards as a smile blossomed in the beautiful scenery. Emoting couldn't help but want to touch her, so he immediately said to the director with a serious expression, "There's no need to wait for 10 minutes. Let's start. I have a meeting later." "Okay, let's start." Director Liu nodded his head and began to prepare. At first, the camera showed Tongning standing barefoot on the beach looking into the distance. Following that, it showed Tongning pacing back and forth on the beach. Finally, it showed Tongning clutching her dress as she stood on the beach with tears rolling down her cheeks. At this time, a tall figure suddenly appeared behind her. From behind, he carefully held onto her right hand and placed the proposal ring on her finger. The script was played, but it did not sound emotional. It was because Emoting's voice was too deep and seductive. At this time, there was a close-up shot of Tongning's face. Her eyes were filled with surprise and sadness. It was as if she was facing the man she deeply loved. The director looked at the couple's natural actions, especially Tongning's tears of joy. He was completely shocked. He had never imagined they would have such a high completion rate. In fact, they practically completed the scene in one take. The entire scene was smooth without any awkwardness. Afterwards, Tongning pounced into Emoting's arms and placed her ring-wearing right hand on his shoulder. The scene was harmonious and beautiful. Between Tongning and Emoting, there was a tacit understanding and affection. It was like they were a couple that had been together for many years. They treated each other as naturally as they treated each other. Are they really not a couple? LM's staff couldn't help but mumble, "Director, look at Tongning's cute and helpless expression and President Mo's doting expression. If they aren't a couple, then they must be natural-born actors. Which one do you believe more?" Chapter 157. Director Liu froze for a moment as he rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. Tongning rehearsed it once before. Her acting is not bad. As for President Mo, I didn't pay attention to his expression. Whether or not he's in love is a personal matter. If you want to survive in Beijing for a long time, don't be so nosy. LM's staff member gave a slight smile as he rubbed his head. I just feel like they look good together. That's a good thing for LM. Just like that, the first scene of the commercial was quickly completed. The camera crew immediately moved on to the next scene. The second scene was the couple running towards the church. The bride had scraped her feet, so the groom removed her shoes and carried her on his back up the steps. Not far from the resort was a European-style church. However, in the scene, the church was only in the distance. However, this did not hinder the beauty of the scene. This time, Tongning was actually going to wear a wedding dress. Inside the waiting room, Tongning was already changing with the help of her makeup artist. Hanging beside her was the champagne-colored strapless wedding dress she was going to wear. It wasn't the most beautiful wedding dress. It was layered with layers of gauze and had no diamonds or crystals. Instead, it was handmade embroidery. It was delicate and gorgeous. The dress didn't have a large hemline because LM didn't want to steal the show. But, in Tongning's heart, just like her relationship with Emoting, it never needed to be grand. Long Jia held back her words. It wasn't until Tongning had changed into the wedding dress in front of the mirror that she couldn't help but exclaim, "How beautiful." Yes, the wedding dress is normal enough. The main thing is, the person is beautiful. The makeup artist complimented as she helped Tongning adjust the hemline. The makeup artist complimented as she helped Tongning adjust the hem of her dress before leaving the room. At this time, Long Jia quickly approached with a beautiful smile. "Are you trying to make up for not being able to take a wedding photo with Big Boss?" Tongning smiled and did not deny it. "Fine, since your husband is Big Boss, you can do whatever you want. But, you look really beautiful like this." Previously, Tongning had also attended a wedding show. But, the feeling was completely different. After all, her partner was the closest person to her. This time, they were going to show off the jewelry that the bride would wear during the wedding. So, Tongning put on a necklace and earrings in advance. Her ink-black hair was tied up in a bun with a crystal hairband and a long veil trailing behind her. Just like that, She walked out of the waiting room, causing the people around her to cheer in amazement. Meanwhile, Ting, who had already finished changing, stood not too far away and stared at her. His heart felt like it had received a heavy blow. He had imagined Tongning putting on a wedding dress for him 1,000,000 times in his mind, but when he actually saw the scene, his eyes began to swell up. The staff from LM glanced at their expressions, lowered his head and smiled, but did not say a word. But it accurately expressed one meaning. If this was not love, then what was there to be sad about? All right, prepare for the second match. Under the director's command, the couple quickly found their positions and slowly appeared in front of the camera. They were an engaged couple who were in a hurry to get married. However, the bride ran too fast and hurt her leg. The groom quickly knelt down and carried the bride on his back. He then grabbed onto the bride's shoe and threw it to the ground. Tongning sat on Ting's broad back, her heart pounding. It seemed, no matter how much time had passed, every time she thought of this person, every time she saw this person, every time she saw this person, every time he treated her well, she would involuntarily let out a silly smile. The director quickly noticed this and felt it was perfect. Whether it was still or moving, Tongning's beauty was vivid and natural. Yet, she didn't try to steal the shine from the jewelry. Filming soon came to an end. However, Ting carried Tongning on his back and walked quite a distance away. Tongning patted him on the shoulder. "Aren't you tired? I want to carry you on my back until the end of time. Mrs. Have I ever complimented you on how beautiful you look in a wedding dress?" Ting did not look back as he continued walking. "Mr. I'm sure I haven't complimented you on how handsome you look in a white suit." The couple quickly completed 2 scenes. Director Liu was extremely satisfied. This meant they didn't even need a day to finish. They could wrap up in half a day, and they could even get some rest at night. Not long after, the couple returned to their original location to discuss the 3rd scene. The 3rd scene was the highlight. To show off the wedding ring, LM's staff suggested they shoot it straight after the wedding and didn't need to change clothes. However, the director felt it wasn't a good idea. It was best to express 3 layers. Tongning thought for a moment and suggested, "Then, let's do it after 10 years of marriage. Our feelings and wedding ring will last forever. What do you guys think?" Let's do it after 10 years. The director nodded his head in agreement. So, the 3rd scene took place on a wooden bridge. In the distance was a lush green forest, making the entire scene colorful and clean. This time, Ting was dressed in a dark blue handmade suit. As usual, his back was facing the camera, but his entire body exuded a sense of nobility and maturity. He was no longer the inexperienced man that tried to sneak attack from behind and throw the bride's shoes away. His body was tall and reliable, like a mountain. Beside him, Tongning no longer had the anxiety and disappointment of a little girl. She no longer had the excitement and nervousness of getting married. At this moment, all she had was peace and contentment. The couple's backs were facing the camera as they faced the scenery. Ting's left hand held onto Tongning's right hand as they revealed their exquisite wedding rings. Then, like a little woman, Tongning rested her head on Ting's shoulder. Perfect, too beautiful. The director praised excitedly. As for the others, they were still immersed in their feelings and couldn't stop reminiscing. It wasn't until the couple finally separated that they realized it was just a commercial. Then, God, this commercial was definitely going to be a hit. Everyone clapped from the bottom of their hearts. Some even screamed in excitement. Tongning was back to being a model and Ting was back to being the high and mighty CEO of Hai Rue. The distance between the two was once again apparent. "Tongning, you are amazing. Of course, I would also like to thank President for his cameo. It was simply perfect." Director Liu laughed happily. His praise came from the bottom of his heart. Ting nodded his head and glanced at Tongning. "As long as I was able to help." "You were a great help. Really, thank you so much, President LM's staff quickly bowed in gratitude. "Remember what you promised me. You will keep my identity a secret. Also, take note of the mole on my ear." "Don't worry, it won't be a problem," the director nodded. "Go on with your work, hurry home," Tongning said as she turned to Ting. Ting did not say a word. He simply nodded his head. Let's go home and pick out our photos. Tongning understood what he meant as she smiled. As for Ling Feng, what was going on? Chapter 158. His agent tried every possible way to persuade him, but Ling Feng finally finished his workout. Sparkling beads of sweat slid down his bronze skin. It was indeed a body that exuded strong hormones. Coupled with his tough and handsome face, it was no wonder that he could become popular so quickly. However, his character. His manager was hard to say. Although he was angry with Tongning, there was no need to delay his work and punish someone else. But Ling Feng was that kind of person. Let's go. Let's go film the commercial, Ling Feng said to his manager as he wiped away his sweat. Okay, I'll go get the car. You can change on the way. His manager let out a sigh of relief as he hurried to the parking lot to get his car. Meanwhile, Ling Feng looked tired. Even though they had arrived at the resort, it didn't seem like he would be able to recover. This made his manager quite worried. The fans are all waiting for the highlights of the shoot. Hurry and take a nap. In a moment, show your perfect face to the cameras. How many people in Beijing can you find that are more handsome than me? Ling Feng scoffed as he crossed his arms and closed his eyes in the back seat. It seemed he thought his appearance was a form of salvation and a gift to the entire filming crew. Not long after, the two men's car drove into the resort. However, the most surprising thing was, the filming crew were already packing up their props. Ling Feng's manager thought the director had no choice but to reschedule the shoot because Ling Feng hadn't turned up. So, he looked everywhere for LM's representative and even gave him a phone call. However, LM's representative had already returned to the agency and said LM would speak to Ling Feng's management company. Ling Feng's manager placed one hand on his hip and explained to LM's representative, Ling Feng is indeed not feeling well, and he is currently on set even though he is sick. Isn't he here already? However, the representative was no longer in the mood to talk to him as he directly hung up the phone. Helpless, the manager grabbed onto one of the workers and asked, Where is the representative from LM? Our Ling Feng is already here. The worker looked at Ling Feng in the car and replied, But the commercial has already been completed. As soon as the manager heard this, he was stunned. His brows furrowed into a crease. What do you mean? The male lead hasn't even arrived yet. What do you mean it's already completed? The director directly changed the male lead, and the commercial filming went smoothly, so we wrapped up half a day earlier. After saying that, the worker carried the tools and left the resort, leaving only the manager with an abnormally ugly expression. He never imagined LM, the director, and Tongning would have the guts to replace Ling Feng. They actually had the guts to replace Ling Feng. The manager trembled in anger. After returning to the car, he held onto the steering wheel for a long time, not knowing what to say. In the end, it was Ling Feng who sensed the change in his emotions. He closed his eyes and asked, When will we start filming? We finished shooting the commercial. The agent replied in a depressed tone, What do you mean? Ling Feng opened his eyes and asked his agent excitedly, You've been replaced. The commercial has already been shot. Her agent replied again, Motherfucker, do you know who I am? How dare you replace me? Ling Feng was, after all, young and impetuous. Not only did he blurt out vulgarities, he even clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it on the back of the chair. Who was it? Who told you to change it? You don't want to stay in this industry anymore? I'll go find out immediately. The manager's expression was dark. According to Ling Feng's current status, although he wasn't an A-lister, he was comparable to one. Yet, LM actually replaced Ling Feng. No wonder when he spoke to LM's staff, they didn't even want to talk to him. It turned out, immediately give my father a phone call. If I find out whose idea was this, I'm going to screw him to death. I hope it has nothing to do with Tongning. Ling Feng acted like an arrogant, spoiled brat. His acting career had been smooth sailing, and most people doted on him. So, when faced with this kind of humiliation, it would be strange if he could endure it. The manager called LM's staff, but no one picked up. So, he called the director. Director, I just went to the set with Ling Feng, but the staff told us the commercial has already been shot. What's going on? Isn't Ling Feng sick? To let him rest, I swapped out the model. Is there a problem? Director Liu asked calmly. How could you do this? Ling Feng is LM's designated male lead. Plus, we have already signed a contract. LM is breaching the contract. Plus, I've already explained to you, Ling Feng is sick. Why would he go to the gym when he's sick? Director Liu laughed. The manager was speechless. His fans have already posted photos of him working out online. How could you tell me he's not feeling well? Director Liu's voice was fearless and indifferent. The commercial has already been shot. My job is done. As for whether or not you breach the contract, you can discuss it with LM. I won't be responsible. After speaking, Director Liu was about to hang up, but his manager held him back. Who's the replacement model? An outsider. It's best you don't ask around. You can't afford to offend him. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Feng's manager's phone began to ring. This made the manager almost throw his phone on the floor. Seeing his expression, Ling Feng quickly asked, "Who is it?" The director told us not to ask around. He said he can't afford to offend him. Do you think I, Ling Feng, am someone to be trifled with? Ling Feng said angrily. He then pulled out his phone and typed out a short paragraph online. I really don't know what I did wrong to be replaced for no reason. Although I already knew about the unspoken rules of the industry, I still feel very disappointed. I won't blame anyone. I simply feel like I didn't work hard enough. I hope everyone is treated fairly, as he was already popular and his fans were all young. After seeing this paragraph, they immediately went crazy, asking him what he had experienced, who bullied him, and why he would say such negative things. Not long after, a fan posted Ling Feng's itinerary for the day. He was going to a holiday resort to film a commercial. Could it be that the male lead had been stolen? Fans began to speculate. Of course, there were also a few loyal fans that contacted Nzaheo, hoping to get some insider information from him. However, Nzaheo did not respond. In just an hour, the post had been shared over 100,000 times. This made Ling Feng quite satisfied. Since others didn't want to make things easy for him, then he was going to make things difficult for them together. After all, the fans in the industry were more tolerant towards male celebrities than female celebrities. He wanted to see director Tongning and LM scolded like dogs. Chapter 159. The popular young man had been replaced. This incident was personally exposed online by the popular young man. In an instant, it attracted countless comments from fans and was shared by popular bloggers. As for those who had or were currently enduring Ling Feng's temper, they couldn't help but hide in the dark and snicker. According to Ling Feng's status and background, the person who dared to replace him was either a lunatic or a hero. Everyone was guessing that this person didn't want to stay in the entertainment industry any longer. Some people even noticed Ling Feng's schedule. He was supposed to be filming LM's commercial, yet Ling Feng had suddenly made such a comment. Was he implying that LM was replacing him? Fans were extremely excited. After all, Ling Feng was a sacred existence in their hearts. Yet, their idol, the dazzling little heavenly king, was being replaced? It was unbearable. Meanwhile, another group of fans noticed that the female lead of the commercial was the battle-hardened Tongning. Tongning. It was Tongning again. She always seemed to be up and down in the middle of things. So, someone began to voice out, "What do you guys think is going on with Tongning? Why is she always involved in everything? Don't drag Tongning into this. She is just a model. She should be doing her job properly. She has no right to interfere when it comes to replacing someone." Tongning's fans quickly tried to clarify for their idol. "Don't say things so early. Be careful you don't want to get slapped in the face." Haha, Tongning has always kept a low profile. Unfortunately, she rose to fame too quickly and has become a hindrance to others. That's why she is always being slandered. Inside the nanny van, Nzaheo looked at the comments online and turned his head to look at Tongning. Seeing she was calm, he explained. Ling Feng created a huge fuss online about the replacement. I heard it was because he went to the resort this afternoon and found out he had been replaced. He went crazy with anger and directly exposed the matter online. For a hedonistic young master like him to see himself being replaced, I wonder how funny he would look. Long Jie couldn't contain her excitement as she sat in the back seat. And Zaheo glared at Long Jie before turning his gaze back to Tongning. I was the one who recommended this person. Ling Feng will definitely hold on to this matter and won't let it go. So, we may be in for a tough battle. He's going to be criticized for this? Even if you didn't recommend him, wouldn't he have replaced him? Long Jie asked in surprise. Do you think his fans will believe that I didn't collude with the director and was simply being kind? Do you think his fans will let her off because of this? Long Jie was speechless. Her previously high spirits had suddenly fallen to rock bottom. There are still photos online of fans bumping into Ling Feng working out. To prevent them from being deleted, Long Jie, go collect them immediately. Also, I will contact the artists who have worked with Ling Feng in the past and hope to unite them to expose Ling Feng's dark side. At that time, we won't have to be afraid of Ling Feng stirring up a storm of blood. He understood what she was thinking. Since he was now Tongning's manager, it was best to leave the crisis to him. Tongning understood what Zaheo was trying to say, but she still had to say what she needed to say. After all, it would make things more complete. Actually, if President Imo were to handle this matter, perhaps it would be easier. As soon as Tongning heard this, she smiled in seriousness. I've said it before, Mo Ting is simply my husband. He is not a tool or a sacrifice that I can use to advance my career. The only reason I asked him to save the situation was because I wanted to make up for our marriage. I already expected this outcome, so I was willing to endure Ling Feng's provocation. Zaheo, from now on, I don't want to hear something like this from you again. Don't even think about it. A woman doesn't lose the ability to do things just because she's married. After all, only by being financially and professionally independent can one be independent. And Zaheo laughed. I know what kind of person you are. I simply want to sigh. Don't think that Ting can do whatever he wants just because he is in a high position. Behind him, there is a group of people waiting to take over his power. After all, who wouldn't want supreme power? Since I'm married to him, I have the responsibility to protect his empire. Things haven't gotten to this point yet. Let's not be so pessimistic, and Zaheo comforted. In the past, you were able to overcome so many obstacles with Long Jie by your side. Don't forget, you have me with you now. Today's shoot was perfect. When you get home, choose a few photos and decorate your love nest. With the mention of photos, Tongning pulled out a ring from her handbag and slipped it onto her middle finger. It was like, all of a sudden, she could no longer hear the voices outside. All she could feel was Imo Ting's good intentions. However, the news of the replacement was quickly blown up by Ling Feng's fans and created a huge commotion. They even formed a team and demanded the truth from LM and Ling Feng's management agency. They demanded justice for their idol. LM and Ling Feng's management agency had already privately discussed compensation for breach of contract. But, seeing that the situation had gotten out of hand, Ling Feng's management agency had no choice but to step out and protect their actor. So, it didn't take long before Ling Feng's manager found out about the entire situation from LM. The replacement was the director's decision. Tongning, on the other hand, recommended someone else to the director. So, as soon as Ling Feng received an answer, he immediately posted his latest thoughts online. Tongning, I've never offended you. Attached to the post was a picture of him pointing his middle finger at Tongning. Above it were the words, bitch. As soon as this post was posted, the internet was in an uproar. A popular male actor was actually tearing apart a popular female model. Before Tongning stepped out of the car, Lan Shi saw the latest news. She immediately told Zaheo to return to the office and explain everything. You go home first. I'll handle Lan Shi. After all, this was indeed Tongning's idea. If Tongning continued to go against Lan Shi, her situation at Changtian would only become more and more difficult. Thank you for your hard work. Tongning was well aware of this, so she nodded her head and stepped out of the van. However, seeing Long Jie was still following her, she turned her head and said, Go back and get some rest. Why are you still following me? I'm afraid you're not in a good mood. It's not that bad, Tongning replied calmly. Go and help me collect evidence. That's more practical. Okay, give me a call if you need anything. Long Jie gestured to herself that she was going to make a phone call. After seeing Tongning nod her head, she finally left Hyatt Regency with a peace of mind. 5:30 p.m. Outside the window, the setting sun looked like it was blood red. Half the sky was dyed red as Ting pushed open the front door and returned home. As soon as he saw the sleeping beauty lying on the sofa, he couldn't bear to wake her up. However, Tongning was a light sleeper. As soon as she heard Ting change his shoes, she opened her eyes. "You're back. Today, I asked Lu Che to do some statistics. Do you know how many times you've been on the hot search rankings in the past 3 months since we've been married?" Ting removed his jacket and sat down beside her. He then took the opportunity to wrap his arms around her. "Plus, this time, you were the one who left a weakness for others to use against you. I shouldn't have been so crazy with you." Tongning lifted her head and looked into Ting's eyes. "Who told me to lust after your beauty?" Chapter 160. Chung Tian Entertainment, CEO's Office. This was the first time Zaheo had experienced such an atmosphere. Lan Shi was acting as the CEO as she questioned the irresponsible manager. "What does Ling Feng being replaced have to do with you? Why were you the one to recommend the newcomer in the end? Zaheo, give me an explanation." Tongning was previously put in a difficult position in Moscow, and now she's been humiliated by Ling Feng. "I also want to ask, as the CEO of Tongning's management agency, has President Lan not done enough to protect her own artist?" "And Zaheo, watch your attitude," Lan Shi yelled as she slammed her hands on the table. "I am the CEO of Chung Tian. In this building, it is not up to a manager like you to tell me what to do. Because Tongning is disobedient." And Zaheo continued bluntly. "For our President Lan, signing a disobedient model must be hard on her." Lan Shi seemed to have been hit by Zaheo's words as an unnatural expression flashed across her face. "You guys created this mess. Why should you let the agency clean up for you? Did Tongning not bring her brain with her? The other party is a popular actor with a powerful family background. Doesn't Tongning know the consequences of offending them?" After hearing Lan Shi's words, Zaheo suddenly laughed. He laughed helplessly. "You signed her. After dealing with Yang Jing, President Lan is going to burn the bridge after crossing the river? And Zaheo, don't think that my tolerance towards you has no limits." Lan Shi suddenly looked at Zaheo with a dangerous and dark expression as she warned. However, Zaheo simply stood up from the sofa and shoved one hand into his pocket. "What? Are you planning to ruin me or ruin Tongning?" Lan Shi glared at Zaheo angrily. "I will naturally give the agency an explanation for Tongning's matter. But, Lan Shi, the way you are now, I have to make a very scary decision." After speaking, Zaheo turned around to leave Lan Shi's office. However, Lan Shi called out to stop him. "What do you mean?" Zaheo did not turn around as he said in a firm tone, "From now on, I will never stand on your side." Lan Shi's expression changed. She wanted to stop Zaheo, but his figure had already disappeared into the distance. For the sake of Tongning, Zaheo had thrown away 10 years of friendship just like that. However, Lan Shi had no idea that Zaheo didn't do it because of Tongning, but because of her change. He didn't know why, but when he had more power, he seemed to be especially fickle. No wonder Chung Tian had been stuck at a standstill for the past few years. Comparing Lan Shi to Ting, the difference was huge. The scandal continued to escalate. Ling Feng did not target the well-funded LM, nor did he target the famous director. Instead, he targeted Tongning. He felt she did not have any background, so he decided to settle old and new grudges with her at the same time. With the addition of Chung Tian Entertainment's negative handling of the contract, rumors spread that Tongning signed with Lan. She did not place much importance on her. As for Tongning, she used her usual method of dealing with the situation: silence. After all, the truth would eventually be revealed. But this time, she was really in the wrong. And it wasn't a light mistake. At least, she really shouldn't have interfered with the director's casting, even after Ling Feng had been replaced. There was another reason why Tongning couldn't step out and say anything. She represented LM. If she stepped out and admitted her mistake, it would be like slapping LM in the face. But, in reality, Ling Feng was in the wrong in the first place. However, online, Ling Feng's fans went crazy and dug up news about Tongning. They flooded Tongning's public square with blood and destroyed her Tieba forum. After doing all this, they still felt it wasn't enough. They even fabricated news about Tongning being in an accident and cursed her family to be sent to the crematorium. In the past, fans of female celebrities were more rational. However, fans of male celebrities were different. Seeing these extreme comments, Tongning did not dare to show them to Immerse. She was afraid he would be worried. So in front of him, she pretended nothing had happened. Behind his back, she even gave Lu Che a phone call and told him not to tell Immerse everything. In reality, Immerse already knew everything. Immerse did not mention it in front of Tongning and even gave Long Jia a phone call not to tell Tongning about the comments. He was also worried she would see them. The couple were well aware of this, but neither of them pointed it out. The online attacks against Tongning did not stop. Ling Feng was extremely satisfied with this result. He wanted to know, with his public outburst, would anyone still dare to invite Tongning to events and give her a job? Ling Feng is my bottom line. I don't care if Tongning is a wild model or a wild chicken. As long as she doesn't touch my bottom line, I have nothing to say to her. Tongning is hiding like a turtle again. Hurry up and apologize to Xiao Fo. Don't tell me you want to hide for the rest of your life? Stupid woman, you're too scared to come out. You must know our Ling fans are not to be trifled with. The internet was in an uproar. Ling Feng received a lot of sympathy from the netizens. However, at this time, the higher-ups of LM released a live broadcast to explain the entire situation. The cause of the incident was because on the day of the shoot, Ling Feng did not show up. Furthermore, we did not receive any notice that Ling Feng was taking time off. As a result, the person in charge of LM called Ling Feng's manager to confirm his schedule. However, Ling Feng's manager expressed that because Tongning had previously stood him up and refused to have dinner with him, Ling Feng wanted to use this opportunity to get revenge on her. He even made an unreasonable request for the innocent Tongning to lower her head to Ling Feng before he would agree to shoot the commercial. Ling Feng's actions have severely harmed LM, the director, and Tongning's interests. He has no professionalism to speak of. So, after receiving the unanimous approval of the filming crew, the director decided to replace the male lead Ling Feng and selected a new candidate. Not only did Tongning's manager recommend the male lead, there were many other candidates. However, because they met the criteria, they were selected by the director. This has nothing to do with Tongning. Actor Ling Feng, don't purposely confuse the public and use your power to get revenge. Don't push your own mistakes onto others. I hope you can reflect on yourself first. The incident of replacing Ling Feng has caused a huge uproar and caused a misunderstanding amongst the netizens. We are deeply sorry. As for Ling Feng's fans, they have taught us a lesson. Sometimes, taking a step back isn't enough. In the entertainment industry, we need to pick up our weapons and protect our own interests. At this point, I also wish Mr. Ling Feng the best of luck. LM didn't have any evidence yet because Tongning knew Ling Feng would retaliate in other ways. So, she suggested LM not reveal their trump card. The reason LM dared to say and do anything was because they had received a phone call from the CEO of Hairue. Chapter 161. Our Ling Feng is conscientious and has never been late for filming. Who are you trying to fool by accusing us of abusing our power for personal revenge? Ling Feng's fans began to retaliate. LM is shameless enough to avoid responsibility. We want the truth, otherwise, our fans will fight LM to the end. Tongning is such a bitch, she never says a word and always makes others stick up for her. Bitch. As expected, after LM's explanation, Ling Feng's fans became even crazier. They even threatened to boycott Tongning and LM until Tongning appeared and personally apologized to Ling Feng. Our Ling Feng has been wronged. We can't let this model off so easily. How can a mere model compare to our little heavenly king? Seeing Ling Feng's fans making such extreme comments, Lan Shi immediately called Tongning over to Cheng Tian's office and asked, "How do you plan to deal with this? Tongning, you've never done something so stupid. Tell me, what's wrong with you?" Cheng Tian currently has a huge crowd of fans waiting for you to appear and demand an apology. They've surrounded the entire building. How are you going to salvage the situation? And Zaheo leaned against the table as he watched Lan Shi make things difficult for Tongning. He quickly explained, "Don't you trust us? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Tongning." Lan Shi unleashed her anger at Zaheo. She wanted to show her authority was not to be challenged. If you had accompanied Ling Feng to dinner in the past, things would not have turned out this way. Tongning, when the time is right, can you put down your arrogant attitude? It was just a meal? After a few seconds of silence, Tongning suddenly asked Lan Shi. Her gaze was clear and penetrating. "President Lan, you and I are not stupid. You don't need to trick me like you did Li Danny." Lan Shi looked at Tongning in shock. She never expected Tongning to say something so straightforward. "Tongning," and Zaheo said in a deep voice, suppressing her, "we both know exactly what you treat me as. Lan Shi, I've always respected you, but I never imagined we would face off like this one day." Tongning's voice was cold and firm, causing Lan Shi's heart to feel a chill. Lan Shi didn't dare to look into Tongning's eyes for too long, so she quickly looked away and said, "If you don't resolve the matter with Ling Feng, you don't need to attend any future events. You better take care of yourself." Tongning knew Lan Shi was simply taking the opportunity to weaken her popularity so she could control her. If a normal artist heard these words, they would immediately understand what Lan Shi was trying to say. It was equivalent to being frozen out, and they would be trembling in fear. But Tongning simply stood up and looked at Lan Shi with a deeper meaning. "Why did you have to fall out with Lan Shi?" And Zaheo asked after leaving the office. "If I continue to tolerate her, she will think I have no bottom line and will continue to push it," Tongning replied in a quiet voice. And Zaheo sneered. He completely understood how Tongning felt. Lan Shi liked to use both the carrot and the stick to keep Li Danny and the others in her grasp. After all, Li Danny and the others had desires and made mistakes. But Tongning was different. She simply liked her career as a model and wanted to reach the heights she wanted. "Let's leave from the back door. If I was to be destroyed by Ling Feng, would you be disappointed?" Tongning suddenly asked. "Would you let yourself lose?" And Zaheo did not believe her from the beginning. Tongning smiled calmly without saying a word. Towards her enemies, she had never been soft-hearted. She was going to let Ling Feng continue to cause trouble. After all, the bigger the mess he made, the harder it would be to clean up. As all her other events had been forced to stop, Tongning suddenly had some free time. As Imo Ting returned home, he found her sitting quietly on the sofa, picking through photos. Lu Che looked at Tongning in surprise. "President, the outside world is in chaos, yet the madam hasn't been affected at all. She is so calm." Imo Ting removed his jacket and sat beside Tongning. He looked at the camera in her hands and said, "I heard Lan Shi has already stopped your work." "Huh." Tongning lifted her head and glanced at Imo Ting before nodding her head. "Uh-huh." She stopped. "Aren't you worried? Worrying will only make you lose your judgment. Why bother?" Tongning showed Imo Ting the photo she had chosen. "I like the last scene we took the most. The feeling of me leaning on your shoulder. Let's enlarge this photo, okay?" Imo Ting received the camera and handed it to Lu Che. "Do as you say." Lu Che also received the camera. Seeing the couple were not affected, he smiled and nodded his head before leaving. After all, the president had already done enough behind the scenes. "Are you sure you don't want me to get involved?" Hearing Imo Ting's question, Tongning did not respond at first. But after Lu Che left, she finally pulled out the gossip that Long Jia had gathered from her contacts. After looking at the information, Imo Ting gently rubbed Tongning's waist. "My smart wife." Because Tongning had directly asked Long Jia to look for Ling Feng's competitors, the people in the industry that had long held a grudge against Ling Feng lacked an outlet to vent due to the authority of Ling Feng's father. But they didn't have the guts to go against Ling Feng. So, all they had was evidence. This included photos of Ling Feng flirting with women, acting like a big shot, humiliating his competitors, as well as embarrassing evidence that he was occasionally on time for filming, but went around bragging about his professionalism. After looking through the information, Imo Ting threw it to one side. He was satisfied with Tongning's black-bellied nature. If she didn't have the ability to protect herself, She might as well quit the industry sooner or later. President Mo, do you want to watch a show where you point your finger and hit someone? Ting smiled without saying a word. His handsome and gentle expression remained. Although it didn't take much effort for Tongning to get her hands on the evidence, there was a big difference between doing it without any obstruction. So, how did Long Jie do it without any obstruction? Ting wasn't a wife-slave for nothing. But he simply smiled as he rolled up his sleeves and headed into the kitchen to prepare dinner. Meanwhile, in order to convince people with reasoning, Ling Feng's fans pulled out a lot of evidence of Ling Feng braving the cold and scorching heat to film. For example, he only slept 3 hours a day, had to film a fight scene in -3 degrees Celsius, and insisted on not using a stunt double when he fell from a high altitude. The funniest thing was, Ling Feng even posted a doctor's report stating that he insisted on filming a commercial at the resort despite his illness, only to be told he had been replaced. Both his body and mind suffered a huge blow. Unfortunately, photos of him at the gym had already been saved by Long Jie. It seems Ling Feng will only be satisfied if he forces you to jump off a building. And Zaheo chuckled as he looked at the comments. Yes, it was time for the first face slap. Chapter 162. Breaking news. An in-depth look at Ling Feng's professionalism. This was the headline that an entertainment agency released while Ling Feng was causing a ruckus. With lightning speed, he opened up Ling Feng's path of face slapping. Actor Ling Feng is young and arrogant. Yet, with his outstanding looks, he has won over a large number of fans and his popularity has soared. His management agency has made him look like the perfect lover and is well-liked by his female friends. But, is he really as conscientious as everyone says he is? Let's make a comparison. Firstly, during the filming of LM's commercial, Ling Feng claimed he was sick and had a doctor's diagnosis. But, at the same time, he was photographed by a fan working out at the gym. He even secretly took a photo and posted it online. In the end, the editor quickly took a screenshot and found out that he wasn't feeling well. Secondly, Ling Feng is conscientious? Everyone in the industry knew Ling Feng used his status as a spoilt brat to skip work for no reason and leave whenever he wanted. He never cared about others, and even scolded a staff member and beat them up until they were hospitalized. Was this what his fans meant by Ling Feng's strict self-discipline? The proof is shown in the photo below. Brainless fans, please don't be selectively blind. If your dreams are shattered, then I can only say, sorry. I can't save a brainless person. The most disappointing thing is, it's a bunch of brainless women. Instead of looking for the director that replaced Ling Feng or the person in charge of LM, they purposely targeted Tongning. Why? According to the editor's analysis, out of the three, Tongning has no background and has no support from the agency, so she is the least damaging. Thus, Ling Feng aimed at the first sign of trouble to vent the embarrassing scandal of being replaced because of his absence from work. As for the fans, they were just tools in his hands. Unbeknownst to them, they were used by Ling Feng and became his accomplices. As soon as this news was released, a portion of the fans began to waver. After being slapped in the face, they chose to keep quiet. After Ling Feng saw this article, he was so angry his body began to tremble. Who did this? Who owns this agency? Find out who it is immediately. Seeing Ling Feng's anger, his manager quickly tried to calm him down. I told you before, don't be so brazen. I still have my dad. Ling Feng arrogantly gave his manager the middle finger. I don't believe there's anything my dad can't handle. The agent suppressed his anger and shook his head helplessly. This Ling Feng was an impulsive person who didn't use his brain at all. His young master's temper made it hard for the people around him to deal with him. However, his father was a financial backer of this circle. The tables turned very quickly. However, Ling Feng's fans, who had been fighting the entire time, had already formed an impenetrable wall. To them, even if their idol wanted them to eat shit, it would be delicious. So, they continued to push all the blame onto Tongning. However, the onlookers were unhappy. Ling Feng, these poisonous fans, did Tongning tell your male idol to go to the gym during the commercial? Was it Tongning who told your idol to arrive late? and leave early to bully others? It's not like Tongning is the ancestor of your idol. The male idol fans are mostly young to begin with, so there's no need to argue with them. How dare Ling Feng's fans say that my idol can do whatever he wants? Who told him to be so handsome? Not long ago, they were trying to get even with LM, and now they were arguing with Tongning. They acted like they were number one in the entertainment industry. This face slapping has come too quickly. Ha ha ha, how satisfying. Conscientious and conscientious? Ling Feng is just a lowly bastard. The comments online got louder and louder. The more mature netizens were able to differentiate between right and wrong. Only the younger fans, who had yet to establish proper values, were more extreme in their actions. All in all, LM and Lon, she didn't expect this turn of events. The tables had turned too quickly. Reality proved Tongning's counterattack was always fast and ruthless. Her calmness revealed the wisdom and dominance of a woman. She wasn't someone to be trifled with. The next afternoon, Lu Che delivered a giant poster to Hyatt Regency. Tongning filled the entire wall with photos of the couple holding hands, hoping their relationship would never fade. Madam, in 3 months' time, you will be announcing your marriage, right? Tongning withdrew her gaze and turned to look at Lu Che. She was deep in thought. In that case, I'll have to hurry. Madam, you probably don't know, but in order to let you do what you want without any burden, the president has been dealing with the questioning from the family. Then, it must be tough, right? Tongning lowered her head, feeling a little guilty. Emoting had always doted on her and allowed her to do whatever she wanted. He had never said a single word to force her. Yet, she didn't understand Emoting's difficulties. Actually, it's not that tough. Lu Che felt he had said something he shouldn't have, so he quickly found an excuse to leave. However, Tongning took his words to heart and quickly gave Zaheo a phone call. She really needed work. She needed to regain the glory that belonged to her. Not only because she wanted to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Emoting, but also because of the promise she made when she first left the Tang family. Late at night, a light snowfall suddenly appeared outside the window. As Emoting returned home, his coat was covered in water droplets from the melted snow. Tongning immediately helped him remove his coat and pulled him to sit down. Ting, tell me honestly, did the elders of the Emo family rush you? Emoting wrapped his arm around her and shook his head. What is it? Mrs. Emo, do you want to announce our marriage ahead of time? I'm just afraid it'll be difficult for you. You were born for the runway. I don't want to lock an international supermodel at home. So, I'm more than willing to send you to the top of the fashion industry. Since I've agreed to work for you for half a year, then I won't force you. Emoting, remember. If you have a reason to announce it, I will accept it at any time. Tongning wanted to place this authority in Emoting's hands. That will be the day you dazzle the world. Emoting lowered his head and pressed the tip of his nose against Tongning's. As the couple blinked, they could feel each other's eyelashes tremble. In fact, he would rather not announce their relationship as husband and wife. That way, they would just be an ordinary husband and wife. Every day when they returned home, a hug would be enough to relieve their fatigue. If they were to announce their relationship, every word and action between the two of them would be scrutinized by others. That was not what he wanted. He suddenly felt a little regretful that he had agreed to announce their relationship in half a year. Wasn't it better to be this simple? As the couple hugged each other affectionately, Zaheo suddenly gave them a phone call. However, Emoting casually picked up. What is it? President Emo? Zaheo was stunned for a moment before he continued. Lon, she has assigned all of Tongning's previous activities to Li Danny and Hua Yuan. It sounded like they were going to kill him. Zaheo didn't want to say the second half of his sentence, so he swallowed it. Emoting hung up the phone and looked at Tongning. You can't stay in Chengtian for long. Hai Rui or Star King, you choose. Chapter 163. Although Hai Rui was at the top of the entertainment industry, their main focus was still on actors and singers. Star King, on the other hand, was the place that all models yearned for, but they had once banned her. So, all of a sudden, she had no choice. Hearing these two names, Tongning smiled at Emoting speechlessly. She did not give him a clear answer. Perhaps she already had her own standards in mind. It seems you don't want to enter either. No, I haven't reached the point where I have to take that step yet, Tongning comforted. President Emo, am I the type of little bunny that would allow others to steal my resources? What if you have to take that step? Emoting asked. If it really comes to that step, I will definitely give you an answer. Tongning's eyes lit up as she replied in seriousness. Okay, you said it yourself. In reality, according to Tongning's current status, what right did she have to choose between Hyrule and Star King? A single male actor was enough to threaten her status and cause her career to falter. What right did she have to convince Star King and Hyrule? Emoting knew she was stubborn, so he did not continue with the topic. However, his heart ached and he didn't know how to release it. So, Emoting wrapped his arm around her waist and suddenly kissed her, demanding for a deep kiss, especially when the two couldn't bear to part from each other. When they returned to the bedroom and saw the large photo, Emoting pressed her against the wall and lowered his head to look at her. What is it? I just want you to know that I am very hot. My heart that wants to protect you is very hot. Tongning seemed to have understood what he meant. She originally wanted to struggle, but Emoting held onto her hands and lifted them above her head. Their ring-covered fingers intertwined against the cold wall. Tongning's heart raced. It was rare for Emoting to look at her with such a conquering gaze. Tongning felt like he was robbing her and was filled with desire. But she did not retreat. In fact, she even turned her head and kissed Emoting on the lips. But it was only a light kiss before she quickly retreated. Are we married, or are we passionately in love? Emoting smiled as the mole on his earlobe glowed under the light of the chandelier. Do you like it? Then, I'll let you spend the rest of your life passionately in love. After speaking, Emoting's kiss landed on her lips. It was like he was kissing the most precious thing in his life. He was being so careful. She tried her best to feel the warmth of his body and the heat of his body. She really, really liked this man. It was really a little frightening. 11 p.m. The lights in Changtian Entertainment CEO's office were still blindingly bright. She was still tiredly dealing with work when Nzaheo rushed over from home and knocked on her door. Of course, he was here because of Tongning. Shi, the entire agency knows what you've done to Tongning. Shi put down her pen and lifted her head. As she looked at Nzaheo, she let out a mocking laugh. You have no right to question my decision. Nzaheo leaned over and placed his palms on the edge of the desk as he looked down at Shi. So, are you really planning to ban Tongning? Is the trouble Tongning has caused not small? But Tongning has already resolved it. Shi stood up from her chair and walked around to the large floor-to-ceiling window. She crossed her arms and looked a little gloomy. Tongning's ambition is too big. Zaheo, isn't it good to be ambitious? It means she is willing to fight for what she wants. Didn't you sign her with the same intention in mind? Now you're telling me you're afraid of her ambition? And Zaheo laughed as he looked at Shi's back. How has Tongning gotten in your way? Do you think she cares about your position as CEO? Or does she care about stepping on your head? Shi sighed before turning around and replying coldly to Nzaheo. I've already made arrangements and distributed the resources. Do you want me to return them to Tongning now? Do you think that's possible? Nzaheo remained silent for about a minute before he finally stood up and said coldly to Shi, you will not be able to take anything that belongs to Tongning. Shi lifted her chin. She felt Nzaheo was joking. Nzaheo knew he had nothing more to say to Shi, so he smiled. Let's wait and see. After speaking, Nzaheo left Shi's office. Meanwhile, Shi's gaze was filled with hostility. She only had one thought in her mind, to separate Nzaheo and Tongning. Since she had decided to freeze Tongning, she no longer needed a manager. After leaving Shi's office, Nzaheo felt uncomfortable as he gave Tongning a phone call. It seems, I can't do much for you. I'm guessing Shi has even more tricks up her sleeves. You need to be careful. We've already signed a portion of our previous contract. I'll try my best. As long as the other party is firm, Shi won't be able to casually switch models. You've worked hard, Tongning comforted. But If you really can't handle it, don't go head-to-head with Lan Shi. I've climbed back up from the lowest point. I've always had nothing, so I don't care what I lose. But you still need to rely on Cheng Tian. We may not necessarily lose. With Tongning's encouragement, and Zaheo suddenly gathered his courage and confidence. Let me get in touch with the other party. After hanging up the phone, Tongning also looked out the window into the distance. Lan Shi, you're about to step on my line. Ling Feng's incident had been going on for 2 to 3 days. However, after being slapped in the face by his agency, he was ordered by his agency to not provoke Tongning again. So, Ling Feng had been hiding at home without leaving a single inch, even though he wasn't willing to accept it. But he was still a popular male celebrity that couldn't withstand any digging. Plus, due to his father's business failure, he had no time to care about him. So, Ling Feng's mood became even more depressed. Soon after, LM announced that they were going to release highlights from their commercial shoot. In other words, they were going to release footage of Tongning and the mysterious actor. Ling Feng sat in front of the TV drinking red wine and swinging his legs. He refused to believe that there was a man with a better body than him. Of course, Ling Feng's fans were also clamoring like crazy. They wanted to know who the person that stole Ling Feng's job was. Can't you drink a little less? Haven't you been exposed enough? Ling Feng's manager reminded. Hey, LM has already openly provoked me. Why can't I have a sip of wine? Ling Feng grabbed the bottle and pointed to the TV as he cursed, Tongning, that bitch. I hope she dies as soon as possible. What highlights? How dare she be so arrogant after stealing my position? Chapter 164. Don't be angry. I heard from an insider that because of this incident, Tongning has been used by Cheng Tian's CEO as a pretext and has been frozen internally. I heard that, because of this incident, the resources that Tongning previously negotiated have all been split evenly. She doesn't have the strength to compete with you right now. Ling Feng's manager sat down beside Ling Feng and explained everything he had heard without missing a single word. Is what you're saying true? Ling Feng tilted his head back and drank his wine before sitting down on the sofa behind him. Have you confirmed it? I've basically confirmed it. Ling Feng put down his glass of wine and laughed. Let that bitch compete with me. But Cheng Tian just signed Tongning. How did things get to this point? Cheng Tian's internal strife is something that outsiders like you can't understand. Afterwards, Ling Feng's manager patted him on the shoulder. So, don't waste your time trying to compete with Tongning. Right now, she is nothing more than a street rat. Ling Feng was extremely excited. Ignoring his manager's advice, he pulled out his phone and sent a message. Ha ha ha, I heard Tongning has been frozen by Cheng Tian. Tongning had been frozen? Did Ling Feng hate Tongning so much that he had gone crazy? The reporters couldn't understand why Cheng Tian had signed Tongning in such a grand manner. How could they slap themselves in the face so quickly? However, since this matter had come from Ling Feng's mouth, the media felt it was necessary to investigate further. So, they directly made a phone call to Cheng Tian's CEO's office. Lan Shi simply wanted to deal with Tongning in peace. She didn't want the matter to blow up. But she never expected Ling Feng to expose this matter. She was going to freeze Tongning. She didn't want the public to know that she was pressuring Tongning because she had already lost her value. Above all, she didn't want the public to know that she was burning the bridge after crossing the river and throwing it away after using it. It turned out, deep down, she knew that her actions were shameless and shameful. After all, simply because Ling Feng had replaced Tongning, the reason for freezing her was too weak and far-fetched. Most importantly, she never expected Tongning to retaliate. Even if this person was her, Tongning would never back down. Right now, there are rumors going around that Cheng Tian Entertainment has already frozen you. There are even a few rumors that Li Danny has already taken over your job. The public are all guessing that your luck has run out. For a 26-year-old model to be able to come to Cheng Tian Entertainment, that's already not bad. And Zaheo flipped through the computer in his hands and looked at the comments online. He couldn't help but sneer. However, it must be said that that idiot Ling Feng has helped us greatly. Originally, Nzaheo wanted to expose this incident to the public and let the public keep an eye on Lan Shi. But if he did that, both sides would suffer. But now, Ling Feng actually took the initiative to give them such a huge gift. If they still didn't accept it, wouldn't they be letting down Ling Feng's kind intentions? Tongning sat in the van flipping through the latest issue of a magazine. The smile on her face did not diminish in the slightest. He probably thinks this is a joke, but he doesn't know that Lan Shi is too afraid to admit it. Of course, that is, if Lan Shi still wants to keep her face. Why must you see Lan Shi? And Nzaheo felt there was no longer a need for Tongning to see Lan Shi. I'm not the one that wants to see Lan Shi. Lan Shi wants to see me, Tongning corrected. What I'm saying is, you don't have to agree. Let's see her. Who knows? She might regret it. Even if you don't see her regretful expression today, you will definitely see it in the future, Tongning said with a deeper meaning. And Nzaheo closed his laptop and did not say another word. After quite some time, he finally asked, did President Mo really not invite you to Hairue? Tongning, be honest with me. Of course, but I'm not qualified. Tongning replied straightforwardly. And Nzaheo pointed to Tongning. He truly felt sorry for her. She had missed out on such a great opportunity. Half an hour later, the three finally arrived at Chengtian Entertainment. A large group of reporters swarmed towards them, but Long Jie and Nzaheo immediately acted as a human shield for Tongning and opened up a path for her to enter the building. Lan Shi's secretary was already waiting at the entrance. As soon as she saw Tongning, she immediately called her to the meeting room. Tongning secretly furrowed her brows as she led Nzaheo and Long Jie to the meeting room. However, after opening the door, not only did she see Lan Shi, she also saw Li Danny and another international model from Chengtian, Hua Yuan. The woman seemed to have noticed Tongning as she looked at her meaningfully. It seemed she had something to say, but Lan Shi was present. Tongning could sense that it was kindness. So, she nodded her head at the woman. She was a woman of foreign descent with short hair. Although her facial features weren't stunning, they were well-defined and had a strong personal style. It was no wonder she was able to enter the international runway. Tongning sit, Lan Shi said coldly. The reason why I asked Danny and Hua Yuan to come today is because I want you to get to know each other. However, I can restore your job, but you need to control your personality. What about my personality has made President Lan unhappy? Tongning asked straightforwardly. If you were half as obedient as they are, you wouldn't be in so much trouble, Lan Shi replied coldly. To put it bluntly, you are a sign model of Chengtian. Your future is in my hands. I simply hope you can be obedient and cooperate with the agency. What's wrong with that? Including eating dinner with the male actors? That is to help you create hype. Lan Shi couldn't take it anymore. She felt Tongning was being too arrogant. Fine, I won't argue with you. I just want to ask you, do you still want to become an international supermodel? At least you know I won't compromise, right? The only reason why you asked them to come here is because you want to force me to withdraw. And they can be your witnesses. Tongning exposed Lan Shi's plan. Hearing this, Lan Shi suddenly stopped holding back. She looked at Tongning and said, your resources have already been taken over by Hua Yuan and Danny. What else can you do? Plus, you guessed it right, I am indeed trying to force you to withdraw. Because Lan Shi wanted to save face, she had no choice but to make Tongning the traitor. You will come and beg me not to withdraw. Tongning was silent for a few seconds as she looked at Lan Shi. This was the only answer she could give. Lan Shi, you will definitely pay for what you've done today. Hearing this, Li Danny was dumbfounded. Of course, Hua Yuan was also dumbfounded. No one had ever dared to speak to Lan Shi like this. Tongning was indeed the first model to confidently and crazily tell Lan Shi that she would regret it. The shape of Li Danny's mouth was like, is Tongning crazy? Chapter 165. Lan Shi looked at Tongning with ridicule. She even shifted her crossed legs in a flirtatious manner. It was as if she was silently rebuking, do you think a model like you can make me regret? I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Li Danny also looked at Tongning with ridicule. Meanwhile, Hua Yuan looked at Tongning nervously. In front of Lan Shi, Hua Yuan was really worried for her. From now on, did she really not plan to continue working in Chengtian in the industry? In that case, I will wait and see how you will make me regret. Originally, I gave all your resources to Danny and Hua Yuan. Originally, I wanted to compensate you, but it seems I don't need it anymore. Tongning gave a slight smile. She did not look like Lan she expected. Instead, she remained calm and unperturbed. In that case, President Lan, if there's nothing else, I will head home first. If you want to stay and listen to how they take over your job, I have no objections, Lan she said coldly as she looked away. Tongning did not feel any discomfort from these harsh words. She simply turned around and looked at Lan Shi with a deeper meaning. At least, when she signed with Chengtian, she entered with hope. At least, she once trusted Lan Shi. And Zaheo had been waiting at the door. As soon as he saw Tongning walk out, he immediately approached and asked, "What did you say? Haven't you already investigated everything that happened?" Tongning asked Zaheo. She was sure Zaheo had already asked the staff at Chengtian. "Has Lan Shi really gone overboard with you?" "I'm afraid she's going to go even further," Tongning replied. Although her voice was calm, there was a hint of bitterness in it. "I just want to get what I deserve. I don't steal or snatch. I rely on my own abilities. But why is it so difficult? That's true, even my fiancé could turn into someone else's. What's so strange about a friend turning into a natural enemy?" After hearing Tongning's words, Zaheo had no way of refuting her. He understood the pain of being betrayed by a friend. "Zaheo, you were in for a bad time because I threatened Lan Shi. That wasn't a threat. You never say anything you're not confident in and never do anything you're not confident in." And Zaheo looked at Tongning firmly. He had faith in her. Banned internally? Could it be that they couldn't break out of the encirclement? And Zaheo looked at Tongning's smooth and comfortable side profile in disbelief. To make Tongning feel better, he contacted Lu Che and passed the message to Emoting. Meanwhile, after Emoting found out what had happened, his gaze turned cold and sharp. Especially Lu Che, he had never seen his CEO reveal such an expression. Before Emoting met Tongning, he had never placed Chengtian in his eyes, let alone cared about their provocations. But now, Lan Shi was stepping on his beloved. She was stepping on his baby. In fact, when he first sent Tongning to Chengtian, it was to give her a way out. Who would have thought? He had actually sent Tongning to hell. Lan Shi. But, according to Tongning's personality, if she wasn't completely hurt, she wouldn't give up on any hope. If Lan Shi could really send Tongning to his side, to Hai Rue, he could endure for a few more days. 7 p.m. Emoting returned home on time. Seeing Tongning sleeping soundly on the sofa in the living room, he couldn't help but remove his jacket and place it on her. It was only at times like this that he could see Tongning's delicate side, a side that needed protection. Tongning wasn't forcing herself. As a person, especially as a woman, she simply wanted a satisfying job and a happy family. She didn't want to reap without sowing. She simply wanted to be steady. But the experiences she had gone through along the way were as heavy as lead. His heart ached. Perhaps she felt his burning gaze. Tongning slowly opened her eyes. As her gaze met Emoting's, she smiled sweetly. "You're back? You're about to lose your modeling career. How can you still smile?" "Nope." Tongning sat up and hooked one arm around Emoting's neck as she pointed to her head. "Who knows? I might be able to make a comeback tomorrow. Ting, you need to have confidence in me." Emoting pulled her into his embrace and placed his chin on her forehead. "But I'm worried. I'm getting more and more worried. I can't stand by and watch you get bullied. So, as long as you allow me to, I will be the blade in your hand. I will be your weapon. Some people want to use you, but you won't let them. Some people want to use you, but you won't let them. Did you think, without you backing me up, I would risk everything on one throw?" Tongning asked in seriousness. "No matter how independent I am, you are still my only support. Because my happiness depends on you." Emoting's vanity was satisfied. He finally hugged Tongning without saying another word as he quietly enjoyed the peace. Lan Shi wanted to do something behind his back? But How could a person with strong willpower be blacklisted? The next morning, Ling Feng's fans clamored loudly because LM was about to release highlights from the shoot. They wanted to know, why did the director replace Ling Feng? What kind of actor did they find? He actually dared to take on Ling Feng's stall. Hey, the fans are quite supportive, Ling Feng's manager said to Ling Feng as he sipped his coffee. They are all waiting to see who it is that will help you get back at them. Ling Feng tidied himself up neatly. As he was about to head to the agency to discuss his new film, every time he thought about the highlights LM was going to release, his expression turned into one of disdain. What's so special about something like this? Let them do what they want. I used to hate brainless fans, but now I feel they have some use. Be careful what you say, his manager reminded. Did I say anything wrong? Those idiots believe everything I say. They even want to pick a fight with Tongning. Pfft. Ling Feng's manager couldn't stop Ling Feng from speaking his mind. Of course, the drama they were waiting to see was the man that was filming the commercial with Tongning. They could only wait to be ridiculed. Meanwhile, Tongning was in the CEO's office at Hai Rue. She sat on the sofa watching LM's activities. In reality, she was a little nervous. Firstly, this was the first time she and Mo Ting had appeared in front of the public. They were going to be shown to the entire nation. Secondly, would anyone recognize Mo Ting? A few meters away, Mo Ting was sitting at his desk flipping through some documents with a serious expression. He didn't seem to care at all. 10:30 p.m., the agreed time had arrived. As expected, LM released the highlights as soon as possible. Chapter 166. Tongning opened the clip to have a look. It had only been 30 seconds. It turned out, when she and Mo Ting were filming the commercial, this was the expression she had on her face. She trusted him wholeheartedly and was filled with love. It was as if she had forgotten about the world, yet her eyes were filled with attachment towards him. Even she felt her face turn red. Of course, in the video, Mo Ting's back was always shown. But LM used the final scene they filmed, the one where they were holding hands and Tongning was leaning on Mo Ting's shoulder. It was breathtakingly beautiful, because emotions were too moving. LM even used this photo as a promotional image for their wedding ring collection. It was turned into a giant poster and light box. At the same time, it was placed in various shopping malls. All of a sudden, Enzaheo's phone was bombarded with calls from all sorts of different identities. They were either asking about Tongning's schedule, asking about the male model in the back, or asking about the two of them appearing on the front cover of a magazine together or on the runway. At this moment, Enzaheo was at home. He had no idea that a clip released by LM could cause such a stir. So, he quickly pulled out his computer and looked at it. Although he had already seen the clip once during the filming at the resort, after seeing the interaction between Tongning and Mo Ting on the screen, he finally understood why a short 30 seconds of footage could attract so much attention. This was because this commercial could arouse the emotions deep in one's heart. After seeing it, one would feel satisfied and happy. This was the message LM wanted to convey. Marriage was not a grave. The internet was filled with cheers. Oh my God. Even if I knew this was a commercial, I would still willingly accept it. Just watching the clip is so beautiful. LM, hurry up and release the commercial. This is the first time I've fallen in love with a commercial. I've only repeated it 20 to 30 times. Tongning is so beautiful. Appraisal complete. Especially her eyes. They are so clear you can see through her soul. The most important thing is this back. Who is this man? I want to explode. This man is too charismatic. He is dignified, mature, and full of manliness. Why are we only showing his back? I am going to become a fan of his back. To be honest, Ling Feng's fans, please don't hit me. Even if it's just his back, based on the aura of this male model, from head to toe, your Ling Feng cannot be compared. He's so handsome. Luckily, it's not Ling Feng. I'm about to get married. After seeing this advertisement, I decisively bought their ring. I hope I can live happily ever after. Please take a peek at the back view of my dream man. No one expected, After a simple commercial highlight, Tongning and the Backview Dream Man would become the hottest topic. As for Ling Feng, he would only be mentioned when the fans were mocking him or making comparisons. The fans were originally furious, but when they saw the highlights of the commercial, they couldn't say anything. They couldn't find a single flaw in the commercial and couldn't find anything to complain about. In terms of height, Ling Feng only reached the other party's forehead. In terms of physique, Ling Feng was like a chicken compared to the other party. Temperament, that domineering aura of a monarch, completely outshone Ling Feng by 500 streets. Of course, other than not being able to see his face, that was the only regret. The arrogance of Ling Feng's fans had dissipated. Some of the fans who were obsessed with his figure had even climbed the wall to fall in love with the back view of the Dream Man. They directly abandoned Ling Feng halfway there. As for the topic, luckily, Ling Feng was replaced. It also appeared on the top of the search rankings. Of course, the comments were surprisingly consistent. Ling Feng is a piece of trash. If I had such a good resource like the Backview Dream Man in front of me, I would replace him even if I was the director. That's right. I can't agree more. At first, Ling Feng was in a meeting at his agency, so he didn't receive any first-hand news. But after his meeting, he lazily stretched out his hand towards his manager for his phone. His manager was a little hesitant. "What are you waiting for? Why aren't you giving it to me?" His manager looked at Ling Feng hesitantly before obediently handing over his phone. Ling Feng's expression was originally one of ridicule. In fact, he even had a cynical expression as he placed his legs on the glass coffee table and swung them around. But after seeing the highlights, his expression changed. Especially after seeing the comments online, he was so angry that he smashed the phone in his hand. "Who is this?" Ling Feng asked his manager as he pointed to the smashed phone. "Who is this man?" His manager shook his head. "More handsome than me? Are these people blind?" His manager thought to himself, "You are the one that is blind." It wasn't just him, the manager, who was siding with an outsider. Just from the background of the man in the advertisement, one could tell how perfect he was. Compared to Ling Feng, he was miles apart. Everyone could see the difference. Only he himself felt that he was invincible. All in all, the tides have turned. Everyone is praising the director's foresight. He felt that replacing him was a wise move. Of course, his manager didn't have the courage to say the second half of his sentence. However, Ling Feng simply kicked the coffee table and smashed the vase on the table. He couldn't even compare to the man's back. He couldn't even compare to his back. So, in one night, Ling Feng lost 400,000 fans. 400,000. His rival agency immediately found a laughingstock and humiliated Ling Feng. The news of the replacement had been blown out of proportion and almost caused Tongning to be torn apart. But what was the result? Even Ling Feng's fans said, "Well done." The wall-crawling fans crazily searched for the man's back. In just one day, they had forgotten who Ling Feng was. They were curious about the mystery behind the man's back. Everyone surrounded the back of this figure and began to dig extensively. They really wanted to know what this man looked like when he turned around. But the fans searched the industry and found all the male celebrities with similar backs. In the end, they discovered that these male celebrities were either too feminine, too muscular, too elegant but not domineering, or too cold. Unlike this man's back, everything was just right. The fans couldn't find the man, so they naturally turned to Tongning and the director. But how could Tongning take the initiative to tell them? In the end, after 2 days of hard work, the fans finally came up with an irresponsible and vague list. Miraculously, Immerse was included. This irresponsible list also included people from various professions and even foreign celebrities. Tongning's popularity did not decrease. And because she knew who the man was, she became the subject of interviews from all the major media outlets. They wanted to get some clues from her. She watched as Tongning's popularity increased. Her eyes were deep and sinister. She didn't expect Tongning to break out of the encirclement so easily. But did this alone make her kneel down to Tongning? Of course not. This was only the beginning. Chapter 167. LM's commercial was a hit. Not only was it because of the highlights, it was also because of the posters in every major shopping mall. Apart from attracting a large number of newlyweds to buy wedding rings, LM's counter always had groups and groups of fans surrounding the staff with one goal in mind: to find out more about the Backview Dream Man. Who was this person? What was this person's identity? Even a single word would be enough. The staff didn't know whether to laugh or cry as they expressed that this was the first time they had seen this man's backview, and the staff had no idea who he was. Rumor had it that when the Backview Dream Man filmed his commercial, he completely cleared the set. Apart from the director and a few core members, no one knew who he was. At the same time, Tongning's low-key aura also began to shine brightly, especially her performance in the commercial. Every expression, position, and pose was vivid and lifelike, conveying the happiness of a woman into the hearts of the people. As a result, from the moment she announced her comeback, every path she chose and every step she took made it impossible for people to ignore her professionalism. They were all able to see her most stunning side. So, she was not ignored by the public because of her Backview Dream Man. Because, in the commercial, she and the man beside her complemented each other like a painting, so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off them. Because of this, Nzaheo received a lot of invitations. Because of Tongning, no one could ignore her strength as she fiercely charged forward. Online, the list of irresponsible backviews continued to shrink. However, no matter who the backview was, the man working with Tongning was definitely not a simple person. Seeing that Tongning's momentum was going out of control, she sat in her office in deep thought for an hour. In the end, she gave Nzaheo a phone call. Nzaheo was in the middle of confirming that Tongning would accept an interview. As soon as he received Shi's phone call, he immediately drove over to Chungtian Entertainment. The two people looked at each other. They were no longer friends. There was only unfamiliarity in their eyes. "Why are you looking for me?" "What else could I be looking for you for? You are now Tongning's manager. It's easy for you to destroy her," Shi explained. "You don't need to consider anything else. This is an order from your superior." Nzaheo placed one hand in his pocket as he leaned over and looked at Shi. "You are so ugly that I can't recognize you anymore. If you have the ability, then publicly ban Tongning. But, at a time like this, can you? What can you do to the watertight Tongning?" Shi held back her rising and falling chest as she looked away angrily. "Fine, even if you aren't on my side. Who is the man in the commercial with Tongning?" Nzaheo stood up straight like he had seen through Shi. He revealed a mocking smile. "No comment." "Nzaheo, do you want to end up like Yunexian? Or do you want to use Yang Jing as your role model?" Shi squeezed these words out from between her teeth. "What does this have to do with Yunexian?" Shi paused, as if she realized she had said something wrong. She pretended to be calm and said to Nzaheo, "Go out." Shi. Scram. Nzaheo did not stick around as he turned around and left Shi's office. However, Shi stared blankly at the advertisement on the screen. She had tried everything, but no one dared to tell her who this man was. Her intuition told her that this mysterious man had power that could not be underestimated. Meanwhile, Nzaheo, as her employee, and Tongning, as her model, had bypassed her, the CEO, without saying a word and causing so much trouble. Yet, they wanted to enjoy the glory on their own? How could it be that easy? Shi sneered. In the end, the list of mysterious figures was narrowed down to 7 people and could not continue. The remaining 7 people were people that fans couldn't find out about. It was impossible to get in touch with them and very few people knew about them. But, because of these 7 people, the public was given a signal. Tongning wasn't someone with no background. At least, amongst these 7 people, no matter which one it was, they weren't people that the average person could afford to offend. So, Shi's plan to ban Tongning from the public fell through. But, it wasn't enough. She had to give back the things that Tongning wanted her to give away. As for Shi, she wanted to turn Tongning into a second Yunexian. It would be best if she could disappear from the world completely. In reality, Hairue had seen a lot of people with emoting, so they had a feeling that this person was emoting. But, when they thought about emoting's personality, how could he lower himself to help a female model? So, the public, including Hai Rue, began to discuss amongst themselves. But no one dared to associate Mo Ting with this person. Tongning, there are 3 interview shows that I think you can appear on. Pick one of them. And Zaheo asked as he took a screenshot of the show. I'll go on Phone Kai. Tongning glanced at the computer screen and replied. And Zaheo looked at the list of shows that were not on his list of choices and was a little surprised. This interview show is the most open and requires the guests to speak the truth. The questions are also very sharp. They will definitely ask you about your back. Yes, I will do an interview with Phone Kai. And Zaheo thought for a moment and understood Tongning's intention. She was going to retaliate against Lan Shi. Phone Kai was famous in the industry for not manipulating people behind the scenes. Because they were backed by the government, they did everything according to their own ideas and were not restricted by anyone. That way, Lan Shi would not be able to do anything behind the scenes. Above all, this show was a test of an artist's EQ. Because of the high viewership ratings, as long as a guest entered the broadcast room, they would not be able to get away with it. No matter how harsh the questions were, they would have to answer them one by one. Okay. And Zaheo nodded his head. Tongning sure was brave. While you're at it, release some news to the public that Lan Shi wants to ban me internally. If this was the case, then Phone Kai's questions would not only be about the Backview Dream Man, they would also involve Chung Tian. Even if it didn't involve Chung Tian, just the fact that Tongning was going on an interview was enough to make Lan Shi nervous. The phone was silent for a moment. Perhaps Tongning sensed in Zaheo's emotions, so she said to him, I told you before, I will make Lan Shi turn around and beg me. If you think it's too difficult, I will get Long Jie to do it. No need. And Zaheo shook his head as he replied anxiously, Let me do it. Tongning hung up the phone and leaned against a warm chest behind her. Mo Ting took advantage of the situation and wrapped his arms around her. He leaned over and whispered into her ear, You sure have guts to go on Phone Kai. If the other party were to ask you if you are married and who your husband is, how would you respond? Tongning turned her head and pressed closer to Mo Ting. How do you think I will answer? Make a guess. Chapter 168. I don't think Lan Shi will allow you to appear on this interview. If you challenge her bottom line like this, how could she let you off so easily? That's right, Mo Ting said in a deep voice. If she can tolerate you stepping on her head, then other models can do the same. In that case, she will lose the dignity of a CEO. She challenged my bottom line first. Tongning replied calmly, Don't you think a model has no pride? Could it be that only by allowing her to play with me and manipulate me will she be able to maintain her dignity? You know that's not what I meant. I'm just worried that she'll make a move on you. Mo Ting quickly explained. I know that's not what you mean. I'm just lamenting that the majority of people in this world can't get fairness. Plus, for Lan Shi, is the feeling of controlling others really that important? Tongning turned around to face Mo Ting and said in a relaxed tone, Ting, you don't need to feel guilty for sending me to Qingtian. In this world, there are good karma and bad karma. As for me, without any seniors to learn from or give me experience, I can only rely on myself to carve out a bloody path. I'm not afraid of being scarred, because I know that when I'm covered in scars, I'll always succeed. So, what's wrong with Lan Shi making things difficult for you? Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply reached out his hand to gently tuck Tongning's hair behind her ear. He was afraid that Lan Shi wouldn't simply make things difficult for her. Of course, if Lan Shi dared to hurt him, he would make her regret it for the rest of her life. In the middle of the night, Zaheo got someone to spread the news that Lan Shi had already banned Tongning internally. However, because of Tongning's popularity over the past few days, news of Tongning and Chung Tian Entertainment spread like wildfire the next day. Lan Shi's office immediately received a phone call asking for confirmation. Lan Shi instructed her secretary to use the excuse that she was on a business trip and refused to answer any questions. Her relationship with Tongning had long been a secret that couldn't be revealed to the public. Everyone in Changtian was well aware of it. Afterwards, the reporters gave Zaheo a phone call to seek confirmation from Tongning. But Tongning simply replied, I will save this question for Feng Kai and give a direct answer. Lan Shi had already sealed Tongning internally. Could it be that Ling Feng's rumors were true? Tongning had just been signed by Cheng Tian Entertainment, and Tongning was currently doing well. What reason did Cheng Tian have to seal her off internally? But Tongning said she would respond to Feng Kai's interview. What big news did she have to announce? Seeing Tongning's response, Lan Shi was so angry, she smashed the things on her desk to vent her anger. But no matter how her chest heaved up and down, no matter how much she tried to calm her anger, there was one thing she couldn't suppress. Tongning was indeed threatening her. Tongning actually threatened her. Afterwards, Lan Shi called Luo Hao over. Although after the incident with Yang Jing, there was a gap between the two, in this big Cheng Tian, she didn't know who else she could trust. Have you heard about Tongning going on Feng Kai? Now do you understand why I stopped you from signing Tongning into Cheng Tian? I can't deny that I have my own selfish desires, but compared to this, the main reason is that your temperaments can't work together. Right now, you just need to tell me what I should do. Lan Shi didn't want to dwell on the past. All she wanted to do was deal with Tongning as soon as possible. If you don't want her to go on Feng Kai, then you can start with Long Jie. Tongning is a person that clearly distinguishes between kindness and hatred. Although she will definitely take revenge, she truly treats Long Jie as one of her own. If you don't want her to do anything, then Long Jie is your best target. If you don't stop Tongning, Luo Hao took a drag of his cigarette in front of Lan Shi as he remembered Yang Jing's words. I remember Tongning once said in an interview that she doesn't have a boyfriend. In that case, you can expose her living with another man and accuse her of lying to the public. Of course, they didn't understand what Tongning was trying to say. It was because she had a husband and not a boyfriend. Also, Zaheo can't be allowed to stay by Tongning's side. When that time comes, Tongning will suffer a crushing defeat and her manager will be fired. No matter what you do to her, no one will question you. All they will do is applaud you. Lan Shi glared at Luo Hao. The caution in her eyes was even deeper than when she thought about Tongning. So, it turns out, you have so many things in your heart. I've thought about it for a long time, how to deal with Tongning, but I've never had the chance. Every day, I've been thinking about what happened today and what I can do to defeat Tongning. Luo Hao's mind was filled with the words Yang Jing had said, "Help me get revenge." Lan Shi nodded her head in ridicule. Although she didn't agree with Luo Hao, she couldn't deny that Luo Hao's method had solved her problem. Tongning wanted her, the CEO, to kneel? Let's see who will kneel first. Feng Kai's interview was scheduled for the following week, 3 days later. Meanwhile, because of LM's commercial, Tongning once again received invitations from magazines and runway shows. Not only that, the companies that had previously replaced Li Danny and Hua Yuan all requested Lan Shi to replace Tongning. They had seen Tongning's charisma as a model. It was truly amazing. Because of this, Li Danny complained to Lan Shi in the office, "President Lan, in the end, none of the resources I received from Tongning are usable. Worst of all, the other party is planning to send you a lawyer's letter claiming you did not follow through with the contract and replace Tongning. This is not going to be a small sum." Lan Shi furrowed her brows. At first, she didn't think much of it. But, as Hua Yuan began to add up all the activities, Lan Shi knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. These shameless business partners. In terms of status, Li Danny and Hua Yuan were both higher than Tongning. Yet, the other party was blind to not use Li Danny and Hua Yuan. I can't believe Tongning is working so hard. This is only 1 month of work, yet it's already more than Hua Yuan and I put together. An old model is indeed an old model. Once you get old, you can only work hard. Hua Yuan did not say anything as harsh as Lan Shi. She simply reminded Lan Shi, "How about President Lan? You get Tongning to come back and pick you up?" Lan Shi looked at Hua Yuan with deep meaning. In the end, she pulled out her phone and called for her secretary. She had decided to renegotiate with the business partners. However, in the end, without exception, they still wanted Tongning. Lan Shi had no choice but to give Tongning a phone call. "Right now, come to the office." On the other side of the phone, Tongning was currently jogging with Emoting. All she said was, "If you need anything, contact my manager." So, she completely ignored Lan Shi. She simply glanced at Emoting's good figure before continuing to jog on the treadmill. "Lan Shi, you gave away resources just like that. Now, you want to return them? You still have to see if I accept them." Chapter 169. This was the first time an artist had hung up on Lan Shi's phone. It was an A-list model called Tongning. Lan Shi held back her anger and suppressed the frustration in her heart. She then gave Nzaheo a phone call. At this time, Nzaheo flipped through Tongning's schedule and replied, "Because you let Hua Yun and Li Danny handle all of her previous jobs, Tongning has accepted other jobs. Her schedule is already full. I'm sorry, President Lan. It's not our fault." Of course, it wasn't Tongning and Nzaheo's fault. Lan Shi had only herself to blame for everything. She never expected Tongning would become so popular because of LM's highlight reel, nor did she expect her business partners would insist on Tongning. Losing a sum of compensation wasn't a big deal, but as the CEO of Chengtian, she had absolute power, yet she was being played around by a model? Lan Shi hung up the phone. If Tongning was in front of her, she would have pounced on her and torn her to shreds. After thinking for a moment, Lan Shi called Luo Hao into her office. She placed one hand on her forehead and asked tiredly, "Who else does Long Jie have at home?" "Her parents passed away early, so she still has a grandfather." "Then what are you waiting for? There are only 2 days left until Tongning goes on phone kai. Immediately send someone to fetch her grandfather. Be careful, don't make any noise." Lan Shi lowered her arms and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out from inside the office. "Lan Shi." Luo Hao's expression darkened. He had never seen Lan Shi hate someone so much that she would do something like this in front of everyone. "I want Tongning to walk step by step into my trap. I want her to know that I am her master." Now that things had gotten to this point, it was no longer as simple as an internal fight. As Lan Shi and Tongning's relationship worsened, a fierce battle was bound to break out between the two. Neither was willing to bow down to the other. Luo Hao looked at Lan Shi's determined expression and nodded his head. "I understand. I will handle this matter for you." To deal with an unusual person, you need to use an unusual method. In reality, Tongning had always been on the defensive against Lan Shi. Otherwise, all she could do was wait to be taken advantage of. In Lan Shi's eyes, her models were either like Li Danny, who thought highly of themselves and were easy to control, or like Hua Yuan, who knew what was right and what was wrong, but had no choice but to go with the flow. Tongning didn't want to do anything, she just wanted to be herself. After confirming the interview time for phone kai, Nzaheo arranged for Tongning to go to a few top magazines for interviews. That evening, she suddenly received a message from Emoting. "Dinner at the Crown Hotel tonight. I've booked a candlelit dinner." Tongning looked at the date on her phone and smiled. "What are you doing?" "Today is not our wedding anniversary. I'll take you to see the best scenery in Beijing." Tongning put away her phone and turned to look at Longjie and Nzaheo. Originally, she wanted Nzaheo to escort her to Hairue, but Longjie suddenly said, "My grandfather has come to Beijing to see me. I need to hurry home." "Why don't we all go see your grandfather?" "No need, Tongning. According to your current popularity, you are bound to have a crowd of fans. You should let my grandfather off the hook." Long Jie clasped her hands together and made an exaggerated gesture of worship. Tongning let out a gentle laugh and said to Long Jie, "In that case, take your grandfather out and have some fun. I'll give you 2 days off." "Okay." Long Jie nodded her head and smiled sweetly. Afterwards, Tongning asked Nzaheo to drop Long Jie off and escorted her to Hairue. After Emoting appeared, Nzaheo finally retreated and handed over the responsibility of protecting Long Jie to Emoting. He had recently been investigating the truth behind Yun Xian's death. After returning to Emoting's car, the couple looked at each other and smiled. However, when they arrived at the hotel, Tongning and Emoting alighted from the car through a special passageway. Originally, they wanted to hand the keys to the hotel attendant, but Tongning noticed the attendant's posture. As she received the keys from Imo Ting, the attendant had his head lowered the entire time. At this moment, Tongning didn't know what to feel. It was like all the love and hate in the past had disappeared. All she could feel was the warmth of the person hugging her. "What are you looking at?" Imo Ting asked. "That person just now was Han Yufan," Tongning replied calmly. Seeing Imo Ting's eyebrows furrow, she quickly explained, "Hey, don't misunderstand. I was just surprised. Doesn't he have a mother that's married to a director? Logically speaking, even if he was kicked out of Tianyi, he shouldn't have ended up in this state." Imo Ting was a little unhappy as he dragged Tongning away and wrapped her in his coat until they entered the lift. Tongning let out a gentle laugh. It was rare to see Imo Ting jealous, so she secretly stretched out her hand and held onto one of Imo Ting's fingers as she shook it. "That's all in the past." Imo Ting took the opportunity to pinch her chin and force her to look into his eyes. "In that case, you should take the initiative. I'll be your future." Tongning took the opportunity to place a kiss on his lips and bury her blushing face into his neck. "Is that enough?" Imo Ting was satisfied as he hugged her tightly and led her to the top floor of the hotel, the 120th floor. "This is the highest floor in Beijing. You can see the entire city from here." Tongning stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows as she looked down. She couldn't help but be moved by the sparkling lights of the city. A moment later, someone hugged her from behind and placed his lips on her neck. "Are you afraid of heights?" "With you here, I'm not afraid." Tongning shook her head. With the satisfaction of being needed and relied on, Imo Ting turned Tongning's chin and gently placed a kiss on it. "Actually, a place like this is more suitable for kissing." "Why?" "Because it's too high. It's easy to lack oxygen." Meanwhile, Long Jia rushed home anxiously. However, she did not see her grandfather as she had hoped. Instead, she saw Luo Hao waiting for her at the front door. Long Jia was confused. Just as she was about to give her grandfather a phone call, Luo Hao snatched the phone from her hand and helped her hang up. He then tilted his head and reminded her, "Get in the car. Don't you want to see your grandfather?" "What did you do to my grandfather?" Long Jia paused for a moment before realizing something was wrong. Her eyes turned red and her voice became a little hoarse. "What can we do to him? We simply invited him to be our guest." After speaking, Luo Hao opened the car door, gesturing for Long Jia not to waste any more time. Long Jia didn't know what Luo Hao's motive was, nor did she know where her grandfather was. So, all she could do was bite her lip as she boarded Luo Hao's black car. Not long after, the couple arrived in front of Lan Shi's apartment. Long Jia had a bad feeling as she suddenly grabbed onto Luo Hao's arm and asked, "Did President Lan invite my grandfather? What is she trying to coerce me into doing?" After all, Long Jia had been in the industry for a long time, so she was naturally sensitive. "You want to know? Then let's go in," Luo Hao said as he freed himself from her grip and stepped out of the car. Chapter 170. Long Jia suddenly felt like someone had grabbed her by the throat as countless possibilities popped up in her mind, especially after she mechanically entered Lan Shi's apartment. Under the bright chandelier, she saw her simple-looking grandfather talking to Lan Shi with a kind smile on his face. Her chest burned with fire like a volcano that was about to erupt. "President Lan, what is the meaning of this?" Long Jia's voice trembled slightly. Hearing Long Jia's voice, Lan Shi and Grandfather Long both turned to look at her. Lan Shi even stood up and greeted Long Jia warmly. "You have been very responsible towards Tongning, so I wanted to reward you. So, I brought your grandfather over. You don't mind, right?" "Xiaoman, President Lan treats me too well. She treats me like family. You should properly thank her." Grandfather Long smiled happily as he waved his hand at Long Jia. He was wearing a new set of comfortable clothes. Long Jia looked at Lan Shi angrily as her hands clenched into fists. She even wanted to ask Lan Shi if she had any humanity left in her. She didn't even let go of a 78-year-old man. Even a 78-year-old man was being used. "Luo Hao, accompany Grandfather Long to get some rest. I still have some things to discuss with Long Jia." Lan Shi looked at Long Jia threateningly. Her gaze was like a cold knife. Long Jie wanted to drag her grandfather away, but she knew if she didn't get what Lan she wanted, she wouldn't be able to walk out the door. In that case, you guys take your time. I'm going to go get some rest. I'm getting old and useless. I get tired every time I sit in the car. Long Jie watched as her grandfather disappeared into the distance before she questioned Lan Shi. What is the meaning of this? Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Lan Shi left Long Jie's side and returned to the sofa to sit down. I want to use you. It's that simple. But how can I make a loyal dog like you abandon Tongning? I can only think of your family. Long man, you've been in this industry for a long time. Haven't you seen this kind of method before? Aren't you already used to it? Long Jie held back her tears. Even though she had a kind nature, she couldn't withstand Lan Shi's humiliation and coercion. What do you want? Just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Lan Shi let out a laugh as she placed the glass of red wine between her fingers. She then stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. I want to know all of Tongning's secrets. For example, who is that figure in LM's commercial? Long Jie lowered her head, smiled and replied, he's from the Tang family. Long Jie casually made up a story. As you know, Tongning is the heiress of the Tang family. She is just a model. Who could she hire to save the day? It could only be someone from the Tang family. But we couldn't let anyone else in the Tang family know, so we had to keep it a secret. Think about it. If it was any other artist, they would definitely want to be exposed. Why would they disappear without a word? Lan Shi turned around and glanced at Long Jie with a cold glare. But, at least, she accepted the answer. What kind of background does Tongning have? What kind of man are you intimate with? Other than being the daughter of the Tang family who was kicked out, what other background does she have? If she had a powerful background, would she be exploited like this? As for Min, she is quite close to the editor of TQ. They have had dinner together a few times, but they are not that close. Perhaps Tongning likes Lin Wei-san, but editor Lin is not interested in her. After hearing this, Lan Shi walked over to Long Jie and pinched her chin. Tongning clearly said she has a man and they are living together. She has never said she is living with a man. She simply admitted to being in a relationship. Lan Shi glared at Long Jie and warned, you better make sure everything you say today is the truth. Otherwise, your grandfather is getting old and his health isn't good. I've already said everything that needs to be said. What else do you want? If you don't believe me, you can go investigate. Long Jie replied helplessly. Tongning has always relied on herself. No matter when, she has never thought about using someone to get ahead. Nor has she ever thought about being a threat to you. But her existence itself is a threat. Lan Shi finished her glass of red wine in one gulp. She then turned to Long Jie and said, I won't ask you to do too much. Just this one time, stop Tongning from going on phone kai. As long as you succeed, I will let your grandfather go. Long Jie was silent for a moment before sneering. Are you that confident that I will betray Tongning? Long man, although I don't know much about you, I'm sure you wouldn't disregard the grandfather that raised you for the sake of an outsider, right? What do you want me to do? Actually, I don't need you to do much. All I need you to do is hold Tongning back. It's that simple. Lan Shi threw out the task and said it was simple. But, for Long Jie, if she agreed to Lan Shi's suggestion, it would be the same as losing her humanity. In reality, people could make the right choice under any circumstances. If the pressure of the environment changed them, wouldn't they be worse than a spring? I know you and Tongning are like sisters. But, Long man, I can do anything. Long Jie smiled bitterly. Long Jie smiled bitterly. If she still couldn't see Lan Shi's bottom line, then she would be too slow. Do anything. Do. I won't betray Tongning directly. I knew that a long time ago. How about this? That night, Danny has a show to attend and her assistant is on leave. You can be Danny's assistant. She was Tongning's assistant, yet Lan Shi was lending her to lead Danny. What other motive could she have? Would Li Danny let her off so easily? As for Tongning, as soon as she heard she was being bullied, would she still care about the talk show? Okay, but I have a request. That night, I need to send my grandfather off. I promise you. After speaking, She turned around with a hint of ridicule. I'll say it again. There is no such thing as absolute loyalty in this world. Everyone is simply doing it for their own motives. That night, as Longjia left Shi's apartment, she was in a daze. But when she thought of Tongning, she still had a light in her heart. Before dawn, it was pitch black, but with her eyes closed, she could still get through it. Late at night, Tongning returned home from the hotel. Thinking of Longjia's grandfather, she gave Longjia a phone call. Did you pick up, grandfather? Are you happy? Yes, I'm very happy, Longjia replied as she wiped away her tears. Tongning, you have Zaheo by your side. Just pretend I'm on vacation for the next few days. Stop nagging. Do you have enough money to spend? I do. Longjia almost choked on her tears. There are only 2 days left until you go on the show. Remember to be careful. Shi isn't easy to deal with. Hearing Longjia mention Shi, Tongning's smile finally disappeared. She had always thought Longjia was too happy to see her grandfather. But, from the way Longjia spoke, she was definitely suppressing her emotions, not tears of joy. Chapter 171. Grandfather is calling me. Tongning, let me take care of him. Longjia didn't have the courage to continue acting cool in front of Tongning. She knew how meticulous Tongning was. Tongning's fingers tightened around her phone as she nodded her head and replied, "Have a good rest." After Longjia hung up the phone, she collapsed onto the floor like she had been drained of energy. It was like dealing with She wasn't this tiring. Longjia had considered telling Tongning as soon as possible. But, apart from dragging Tongning into the trap, there was no benefit in doing so. Tongning had already endured too much along the way. If they were to tell Tongning about this matter, Tongning and She would definitely not let it go. She would think of a way to save her grandfather, but Tongning and She could forget about framing her, especially when they were using her. Tongning lowered her arms and stood by the window in deep thought. She wasn't sure if she was overthinking, but she felt Longjia was a little different than usual. Behind her, Ting brought her a jacket. After standing beside her, he pulled her into his embrace. Tongning leaned against his chest that gave her a sense of security and looked up at Ting. Ting, can you let Lu Che go see Longjia? I have a feeling there's something wrong with her. In reality, as Longjia's assistant, Lu Che didn't have much free time. But Ting simply lowered his head and kissed Tongning on the forehead. Since his wife had a request, he was going to fulfill it as soon as possible. So, he immediately pulled out his phone and gave Lu Che a phone call, giving him a special task. Lu Che didn't dare to waste any time. Even though he had just finished work, he still drove over to Longjia's apartment. Although he felt it was rude to barge into a woman's apartment at night, for the sake of Tongning's peace of mind, Lu Che still went up the stairs and knocked on Longjia's door. Longjia didn't expect anyone to come. So, she quickly wiped away her tears and asked who it was. Lu Che expressed his intentions. Longjia's heart warmed, but she did not open the door. Go home. I'm fine. I'm already asleep. Lu Che nodded his head and did not continue to disturb her. But Ting had instructed him to see Longjia no matter what. So, Lu Che stood guard outside Longjia's door for the entire night. It wasn't until the next day that Longjia left the house that she saw Lu Che standing outside. She was shocked. It's such a cold day. Why didn't you come home? Lu Che rubbed his hands together and smiled. I slept in the car all night and just got on. Longjia noticed Lu Che's nose had turned red from the cold, so she quickly gestured for him to come in, at least warm him up a little. Lu Che entered Longjia's home with a confused expression. Didn't you say your grandfather came to see you? Where is he? Longjia froze for a moment before replying calmly. At the hotel? Are you in some kind of trouble? Lu Che looked around Longjia's apartment. Because Tongning used to live here, it had multiple floors and was big enough for the whole family. Yet, Longjia was letting her grandfather stay in a hotel? Above all, Long Jie's eyes were swollen to the size of walnuts. It was obvious she had been crying all night. No, if you don't want to tell me, I can ask the president to investigate. No. Long Jie pulled Lu Che back before letting go and taking 2 steps back. We shouldn't alert too many people about something like this. In that case, tell me. Lu Che sat down on the sofa in the living room. Actually, Long Jie couldn't be blamed for not being able to keep the truth to herself. According to Long Jie's usual temper, even if the sky was falling down, she would at most let out a few angry roars. She would never reveal her emotions like this, especially when she purposely put on a facade and forced a smile. It made people even more suspicious. I was threatened. What? Lu Che was shocked. Long Jie lowered her head and explained the entire situation to Lu Che. However, from beginning to end, she emphasized one thing: don't tell Tongning. Don't affect her interview on Feng Kai. Don't let Lan Shi's plan succeed. Otherwise, she will think she can achieve her motive by using this method. From now on, she will only get worse. But you can't just endure it like an idiot. Lan Shi is trying to frame Tongning. If I don't pretend to compromise, she will think of other ways to frame Tongning. Rather than letting that happen, I might as well beat her at her own game. But what about you? What about your grandfather? Lu Che loosened his tie. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There were countless people like Lan Shi in this world. Of course, there were also people like Long Jie who would rather suffer. Wasn't she stupid? Lu Che's heart was moved. When the time comes, I will call the police. I will send someone to keep an eye on where Lan Shi is keeping your grandfather. I will try my best to ensure his safety. If I get the chance, I will definitely help you get him out. Lu Che promised. Actually, Long Jie's considerations were not wrong from her point of view. If she told Tongning, she would only escalate the situation and cause Lan Shi to do something even more extreme. But if she went along with Lan Shi, she would feel wronged. So, temporarily enduring and calling the police was her best option. But Lu Che was afraid Lan Shi would take her revenge on Long Jie's grandfather. Even if you don't tell the madam, you should at least ask someone you trust for help. A few people are better than one. Plus, don't you trust our president? If you tell the president, this matter will be a lot simpler. With Lu Che's concern, Long Jie felt a lot better. But she still decided to minimize the situation. I know Big Boss is capable, but he is my grandfather. How could I dare to gamble? I'm afraid things will get out of hand. What if my grandfather gets hurt? Let me calm Lan Shi down first. Since that's the case, you might as well get some rest at home. I'm sure you didn't sleep well last night. I will stand guard outside the door. Lu Che's voice softened. The night Tongning went on Feng Kai, Lan Shi wanted me to be Li Danny's assistant. As you know, Tongning and Li Danny's relationship is like fire and water. Lan Shi wants Tongning to see me being humiliated at a crucial moment and give up on the chance to go on the show. For your sake, the madam will definitely give up on the chance. Lu Che believed Tongning was the same type of person. She would protect her own people, even if it was just an assistant. She wouldn't allow others to bully her. So, we can't let Lan Shi's plan succeed. I will put on my act. I hope you can help me remind Tongning not to bring her phone on the interview. Lan Shi didn't tell me to trick Tongning into coming. She wanted to play Tai Chi with Lan Shi, just like what Lan Shi had asked her previously. After speaking, Long Jie turned around and returned to her room. As she lay in bed, she felt a lot more at ease as she thought about the man outside. So, Lu Che stood guard at Long Jie's apartment for the entire morning. Apart from giving Emoting and Tongning a phone call, he also instructed the paparazzi he was familiar with to look for clues about Long Jie's grandfather. Long Jie had previously mentioned she had seen her grandfather at Lan Shi's home. But, according to Lan Shi's personality, she would definitely move the hostage. There was no way she would leave any evidence for others to use against her. On the surface, Chung Tian appeared peaceful, but behind the scenes, there was an undercurrent brewing. Tongning would never have imagined the danger that Long Jie was in. Someone that could make someone as calm as her go crazy. Because, this time, Lan Shi had crossed the line. Chapter 172. On the eve of Feng Kai's interview, Tongning went to the studio to record a preview. As she was leaving, a huge crowd of fans gathered at the entrance of the television station. They immediately sent her flowers and requested to take photos with her. Tongning politely nodded her head in agreement. After all, waiting outside on such a cold day was quite tiring. Of course, the fans were most curious about the Backview Dream Man. However, Tongning simply smiled at them. Remember to watch Feng Kai's live broadcast tomorrow. I'm sure you will all be satisfied with the answer. The fans couldn't help but squeal in surprise, especially when they saw Tongning take off her glasses and give them an autograph. Up close, she looks even prettier. Her legs are so long. Tongning Jia, don't be afraid, we will protect you. Tongning gave them autographs as she walked. Hearing these words, she paused for a moment before giving everyone a smile. A 15 to 16-year-old girl wearing a school uniform held a banner in her hand. Tongning was reminded of Lan Yu. They were both at the same age, but the energy these fans gave off moved her. She was only 15 years old, yet she was willing to protect others. So, Tongning couldn't resist as she patted the girl on the head. I will protect you. You protect yourself. In reality, she knew she had always been focused on fighting back and had never had the chance to interact with her fans. From now on, she was going to listen to her fans. In the end, Tongning waved goodbye to everyone and boarded the nanny van under Nzaheo's protection. You sure find it easy to gain energy from others. Nzaheo thought about Tongning's words and commented. Of course, a 15-year-old child actually said she wanted to protect me. Even if she doesn't have the ability, she has the courage. Don't tell me we adults are no better than a child? Nzaheo was speechless, but he did not say a word. All he knew was, he had discovered something new about Tongning. That was, she was constantly reflecting on herself. No wonder she had an endless supply of energy. Are you really going to reveal your identity as the Backview Dream Man tomorrow? Nzaheo finally asked after quite some time. You won't regret it? Tongning smiled mysteriously. Even though it was Nzaheo, she did not respond. But, would she really be able to appear on tomorrow's interview? At the same time, Li Danny and her manager were sitting in Lan Shi's spacious and luxurious office. Lan Shi's back was facing them as she sipped her coffee. Her voice was calm, but it contained an irresistible power. For tomorrow's show, give your assistant a day off. I've prepared a new assistant for you. I don't quite understand what you mean. Li Danny shrugged. Lan Shi turned around and walked over to Li Danny's side. She placed her hand on Li Danny's shoulder. I will transfer Tongning's assistant to you for a day. You can use her however you want. The metaphor was to let you order them around, torture them, and vent your anger. Li Danny didn't quite understand Lan Shi's actions, but of course, Lan Shi wouldn't tell Li Danny her true motive. So, Li Danny hid her smile as she returned to her desk and explained. Tongning is my model. I have the right to use everything the company gives her, including people. However, Li Danny had no idea. Long Jie had always been Tongning's personal assistant. No one else had the right to order her around. Tomorrow, I'll just be your assistant. In the future, I'll be your manager. Hearing Lan Shi mention the word manager, Li Danny's eyes lit up. This meant Lan Shi's tolerance towards Tongning had reached its limit. In other words, she had decided to remove Nzaheo from Tongning's side. I understand. I will make good use of this assistant, Li Danny said without holding back. Li Danny replied bluntly. Since this was Lan Shi's special request, she was not going to disappoint her. After another day and night of tracking, even Lu Che did not receive any information on Long Jie's grandfather. It seemed, Lan Shi was quite cautious in her actions. Long Jie blamed herself, but she couldn't betray Tongning. After all, a person's bottom line couldn't be forgotten. Don't worry, Lan Shi won't dare to act recklessly for now. After all, a person's life is at stake. If Lan Shi gets involved, she will sooner or later play herself to death. She won't take such a big risk, Lu Che comforted. He knew Long Jie was in a difficult position. If it was him, he would have made an irrational decision a long time ago. Lu Che, you need to remind Nzaheo and Tongning not to bring their phones with them at the recording tonight. Don't let them find out about my situation. Can you really handle it? Lu Che was a little worried. It won't be a problem. Lu Che did not say a word, but deep down he knew what was going on. He had used Hai Rui's resources to search for Long Jie for 2 days, but to no avail. Now that he knew Long Jie was going to be humiliated, was he going to sit back and watch her suffer? After returning to Hai Rui, Lu Che had been thinking about this problem. So, when Emoting called him, he did not respond. Why are you so distracted? President, is the madam already on her way to Feng Kai? Lu Che looked out the window and noticed the setting sun. Emoting closed the document in his hands and looked at Lu Che with interest. What are you trying to say? President, Lu Che hesitated for a moment, but still told Emoting the whole story. After hearing, Emoting looked at Lu Che coldly. You've already been by my side for 7 years. Don't tell me 7 years hasn't taught you how to deal with threats? Did you think by using Hai Rui's resources, you could immediately find Long Man's grandfather? How naive. Don't you know, if things get out of hand, a life could be at stake? President, Lu Che couldn't defend himself because this incident involved Tongning. He knew how important Tongning was to Emoting, so he didn't dare to drag her into this mess. Of course, he wanted to keep his promise to Long Jie even more. He should have said this a long time ago, yet he didn't. He also felt it was strange. Emoting took a deep breath, trying to calm his anger. However, just as he was about to make a move, he received a phone call from Tongning. Ting? Is Lu Che there? What's wrong? After thinking about it, I still feel like something isn't right with Long Jie. Why did Lu Che remind Zaheo not to bring our phones to Feng Kai? Tongning asked. Emoting was silent for a moment. In the end, he told Tongning everything that had happened to Long Jie over the past few days. He knew, even if he didn't say anything, Tongning would still be worried about Long Jie and go look for her first. In that case, where is Long Jie right now? After hearing everything, Tongning's voice trembled. Hai Center. Ting, let me handle this personally. But I may need to use your identity. Emoting couldn't help but laugh. Go ahead and use it. Chapter 173. In times of helplessness, people wish they had the strongest power. Because, in this world, sometimes, the strong bullied the weak. Everyone knew Long Jie was Tongning's assistant. Yet, here she was, at Hai, carrying bags of all sizes on her body as she followed behind Li Danny. She obeyed Li Danny's orders and allowed Li Danny to order her around. Did Tongning never teach you the rules in the past? You are now Danny's assistant. If you don't greet people when you see them, people will think there's something wrong with Danny's work attitude. The manager poked Long Jie's head as she scolded her. I don't know if Tongning has a good upbringing, but since you are following Danny today, you need to be respectful. Long Jie endured the humiliation, the scolding and the ridiculing looks of those around her as she lowered her head and replied, Sorry, I will be careful from now on. Danny is about to put on her makeup. Don't run around like a newbie. Go to the car and grab Danny's shoes. Long Jie tried her best to hold back her anger. Her hands were balled into fists as her face gradually turned red from anger. Her eyes were also filled with humiliation. They were filled with suppressed anger and tears. Li Danny's manager looked at Long Jie and uncrossed her arms. She walked over to Li Danny and smiled proudly. When Tongning's people are ordered around, they are indeed different. They are like dogs. Have you put away the things in the shoes? Li Danny sat in front of the mirror as she allowed the makeup artist to work on her face. Don't worry, how could I make a mistake with such an exciting show? The manager looked at Li Danny in the mirror as a mysterious smile appeared on her face. The backstage of a show had always been messy and poor. Even for an international model like Li Danny, when faced with a top international brand, she would not receive any treatment that exceeded her expectations. She would end up in the same waiting room as a bunch of newbie models. A moment later, Long Jie appeared in front of Li Danny with a pair of shoes. The manager glanced at her and scoffed. What are you waiting for? Kneel down and help Danny change her shoes. Helping an artist change their shoes wasn't anything new, but she was Tong Ning's assistant. Yet she had to kneel down in front of Li Danny and help her enemy change her shoes. Long Jia endured the pain in her throat as she knelt on the floor with the shoe in her hand. With one hand, she held the high heel and the other on Li Danny's right foot. However, halfway through the shoe, Li Danny suddenly let out a scream as she kicked Long Jia. Inside the shoe was a sharp thumbtack. Then, pa, with a loud bang, the manager's slap landed on Long Jia's face. She pointed at Long Jia and yelled, "You sure are brave. How dare you place a pushpin in Danny's shoe? Are you trying to make it impossible for Danny to walk the show?" "Did Tong Ning order you to do this?" Long Jia was stunned by the slap as a clear handprint appeared on the left side of her face. "I didn't miss any thumbtacks. When I got them, they looked like this." "You're still quibbling?" The manager threw another slap onto Long Jia's right cheek. She seemed to have used too much force as her own palm started to hurt, so the manager quickly swung it a few times. Everyone saw it. Long Jia looked around at the gazes of sympathy, ridicule, and those that were watching the commotion. In reality, how many of them didn't know what was going on? Li Danny simply wanted to find an excuse to humiliate her in front of everyone. Whether or not she was the one that placed the thumbtack, who cared? Above all, at this show, no one had a higher status than Li Danny. So, who dared to stand up for her? Not a single person. Long Jia, don't think about anyone else standing up for you today. Let me tell you, today, you are Danny's assistant. Even if Tong Ning comes, you will only be beaten and bullied. I'm sorry. Long Jia couldn't hold back her tears anymore. As they landed on her swollen face, her tears burned even hotter and more painful. Do you think an apology is enough? Did you know, because of your thumbtack, Danny's modeling career could be ruined? The manager slammed a heavy accusation onto Long Jia. What do you want me to do? Of course, kneel down in front of Danny and beg for her forgiveness. The manager was surprised that Long Jia didn't understand the rules of the industry. I'm letting you off easy by making you kneel down. If it wasn't for President Lon, I would have called the police. Kneel down? Kneel down in front of Li Danny? Long Jia laughed in her heart. Although she had already prepared herself mentally and thought of a lot of words to comfort herself, when the time came, she was tempted to tear Mo Ting's arrogant face into pieces and snap his neck. Only then would the anger and grievance in her heart be appeased. But isn't kneeling a bit too much? You've already slapped me and humiliated me. You really don't need to go so far. After hearing Long Jia's words, Li Danny's lips curved upwards as she grabbed onto Long Jia's shirt and pulled her towards herself. Did you think I would be afraid of Tong Ning? Did you think, as an international model, I would be afraid of an A-grade model's revenge? If you want to blame someone, then blame yourself for following the wrong owner. Even a dog needs luck. After speaking, Li Danny let go of Long Jia's hand like she had touched something dirty as she quickly wiped her hands with a napkin. Aren't you going to kneel down and apologize? Long Jia did not move. I told you to kneel. The manager kicked Long Jia's leg from behind. Seeing this scene, the staff from Hai couldn't stand it anymore as they stepped forward to intervene. Danny, this is a public place. Don't you think it's inappropriate for you to do this? This evil woman placed a thumbtack in Danny's shoe. What's the meaning of this? Isn't this asking for Danny's life? We are already being very kind by not calling the police. Shouldn't we just ask her to apologize? The staff smiled awkwardly at the manager. But she is still Tong Ning's assistant. As soon as the manager heard Tong Ning's name, she exerted even more force on her leg, causing Long Jia to kneel on the ground uncontrollably. The pain spread from her knee to the rest of her body as everyone around burst into laughter. The manager rubbed his chin as he looked at Long Jia with a satisfied expression. If you had been so obedient from the start, I wouldn't have had to put in so much effort. Hey, since you've already kneeled, shouldn't you also kowtow to our Danny? The manager held onto Long Jia's shoulder and was about to push her down when the backstage suddenly became noisy. It wasn't clear who shouted, "Tong Ning has arrived." Not long after, Li Danny's manager lifted his head. Before he could see who it was, a slap flew towards him. The force of the slap was more than 10 times stronger than the one he had used on Long Jia. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.